Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Worm, a Daily Planet Films podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss the hit web serial Worm week by week, arc by arc. My name is Matt Freeman, an overworked, underappreciated psychoanalyst, and I'm joined as always by my patient, an amorphous mass of semi-sentient tentacles. Scott, how are you feeling today?
I guess I'm okay. I'm worried that my bad relationship with my mother is preventing me from reaching my potential. Also, my tentacles keep murdering people. But I don't want to talk about that right now. Because as you said, this is... I like the hmms. I like the very... very... That's all I know about shrinks. So that is them saying, so that's good. But I don't want to talk about that right now, Matt. I want to talk about Worm, because as you said, this is the podcast where you, a Worm expert, guide me, a first-time reader, through Wildbow's world of superheroes, supervillains, and everything in between, as I inspect, interpret, and even speculate on what this story is and where it is going. This week, we are finishing up Arc 18 Queen, starting from the Jessica Yamada interlude. Did I say that right, Matt?
Yeah, we're going to be pretty permissive on the pronunciation as usual.
Oh, right.
But I think that's correct.
Nailed it. All right. And finish up through the rest of the arc. Matt, this is a pretty action-packed little section here on top of a really, really long interlude that is just someone psychoanalyzing people, which is incredible. But there's a lot going on here. It's a really nice conclusion, I think, to everything that we had set up in the first half.
Yeah, you guys by now know that we like to talk about the character stuff relatively more than we like to talk about combat, so you can expect us to spend quite a bit of time on this beginning Dr. Yamada interlude. Yeah. The combat's fun too. There's a lot of really great specific moments and little dabs of characterization that we get throughout it. So that's going to get its due. But I've been excited to talk about this interlude for a long time, ever since pretty much the first time Scott said that these people need therapy, because they do.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I am really excited to get into this. I think we are going to spend probably half the time on this first interlude, which is crazy, but I wanted to make sure that we got in as... I didn't want to leave anything in the interlude that we haven't talked about. So we're going to spend as much time as we need on it, which means we're probably going to go long, which is just typical for us these days.
Right. Go average, basically.
Yeah. All right. So Matt, we had so many comments and questions and stuff this week, and I wanted to answer a lot of them, but I wanted to talk about Nazis for a little bit. Because one of the biggest surprises I saw in last week's episode was a series of pushbacks in regard to my general stance on the Crusader interlude. I tried to address some of the comments in the Reddit thread, but I know that we have a much bigger listener base than just those people that check Reddit regularly, so I wanted to take a moment to use my platform here to discuss it as well. First off, I just want to say that I think I failed last week to do a really good job articulating my stance on this whole thing, and that's absolutely on me. We were coming off a weekend where literal Nazis marched into Charlottesville, Virginia, and an innocent woman wound up dead. We recorded the episode on the day of President Trump's truly insensitive press conference, where he appeared to defend the side of the white supremacists. I don't want to get into politics. That's as far as into it I'm going to go. All that to be said, I was very mad, and I came into this podcast kind of carrying some of my anger into the recording session. And I think that was kind of the result of my general dismissiveness. I do want to say that I do think humanizing monstrous people is important. And I strongly agree with Matt, both what you said last week when you were, I think, trying to get me to push back a little bit on my stance of fuck this, I don't want to do it. And as well as a lot of great points that people made in the Reddit. And about, just my dismissal of white supremacists as a whole, and then of the text of this chapter specifically. Just like last week, I was carrying all that stuff on my back, and I was not interested in having a conversation about humanizing Nazis. I couldn't do it. I tried. I even said at the beginning of that section, I'm going to be a professional, and then I didn't do it. And I thought about, as I was going through editing, I thought about cutting that stuff out. I thought about just editing around it and just covering the parts of the chapter we really got into. But I felt like the most fair thing to do here was to keep the episode real and just leave everything in. So that's what I did. So to all the people that said that, Scott, you should be humanizing these people, you should be looking at the root cause of the stuff, you're absolutely right. And I failed to do that last week, and that's on me. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, though, is, and I promise, Matt, I'll let you talk in a bit.
Go for it, man.
But there's this common element I saw last week that people said I was really dismissive of these white supremacist characters, but I was really sympathetic to Noelle's Vista clones that happened, who are literal monsters. And first of all, I think a lot of that, again, stems from my anger over Charlottesville, and that it's a lot easier to pity fictional characters than characters who represent a real and prescient threat in the country that I live in. And when I say things like, they suck and I hope they die, I'm kind of not being fully literal with that statement. It's more of a statement of dismissal than it is a legitimate wish to see Crusader's artery ripped open like these poor Vista clones were. That would be terrible. I'd much rather him just be in jail. But I did want to talk about this a little bit because the difference to me is this idea of choice. And we talk about choice on this podcast a lot. And I look at the character like Purity, and I see her as someone who has chosen again and again and again and again to ally herself with this group. She says she doesn't consider herself racist, but she pals around with them and she pushes forward their agenda. Yes, she's a human being. Yes, she's suffered trauma. And yes, she's a caring mother to both her child and to poor Theo. But she's also a Nazi, and she chooses to be. And I think that the difference with the clones is that they are these monstrous, deformed beings birthed into existence really only to destroy. That's their whole purpose. Like all of their, and we even see this confirmed in this chapter, in this section. I mean, we're going to get to this where it's like all their positive emotions turn to zero. All their negative emotions are turned all the way up. Every insecurity they have, every thing about themselves that they don't like or thing about other things they don't like is like cranked up to the extreme to turn them into this destruction machine. But they do have those memories. They have those thoughts, those fears, and those loves. So yeah, I pity them. I pity that poor Vista clone who is the same person that sat in this chair with Jessica Yamada, but doesn't have the ability to deal with her anger, her grief, her insecurity. I pity her poor, miserable existence and her necessarily short life. And yeah, I pity her more than I pity a woman who propagates racist ideologies under the guise of helping people. And that's just how I'm always going to be.
Yeah, I think the clones are more purely tragic creatures because they can think and they can feel. Yeah. But due to their nature, they can't think or feel anything except pain and rage and destruction and negative things, like you said. That's just kind of objectively speaking, very pitiable, much more pitiable than someone who chooses to hurt people, basically.
Yeah. And like, I get that there are white supremacists that have been indoctrinated into this thing from birth, that they've grown up in a family that believes these things and they just believe them because they were taught to. I get that and I understand that, and I think it's important to study that. But Purity is still making choices. She's still able to make decisions, and she is continually choosing that path, even if she was indoctrinated into it from the beginning. So that's the difference to me. And I think this gets back to one of the big themes that Wild Bow is exploring in the story, that nature of evil. What makes people good? What makes them bad? How much of who we are is defined by those events of our past versus the active choices we make today. And it is very much true that Wild Bow humanizes everyone to do that. Like, he will, like, from the Nazi to the evil clone, he will take time to humanize these creatures and people so we can try to understand them. And
yeah, and that's more dramatically interesting anyway. I mean, it's not interesting to read a story about something that has no humanity.
Yeah. And I think that the interesting thing is, like, despite all that pain and trauma and all those poor choices that they've gone through, the central question of the story is kind of, can someone that's all this has happened to them, can they be good? And I think Taylor is kind of the key central figure for that. So I do agree that when I refuse to engage with the story, I kind of why-butted myself. Because it's very clear that on at least some level in this chapter, Wildbow was trying to humanize Crusader. We see that his family harvested him for organs for his sister, and yes, he did a truly terrible thing, and even though he's a horrible human being that I still don't like at all, he is a human being. So you guys were right. I cop to that. I apologize for any unprofessionalism and any confusion in my ability to articulate myself. And that's really all I want to say. If you have any more things you want to talk about that, feel free. But I think I'm done mentioning it on the podcast for now. But I just wanted to get that out there. So thanks for letting me take the time. And Matt, I will give you back control of your podcast now.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, I think it's really an entirely appropriate subject matter because like a major theme of this work that we're analyzing is really kind of the nature of good and evil and really more specifically like what it is to try to be good and to do good, like you said. And just how hard that can be. So it's completely appropriate. It's not a tangent, I don't think, and I think it's speaks to the power of the work that it prompts conversations like this.
I completely agree. Yeah.
So, all right, we're gonna get right on into this arc now, Scott.
All right, let's do it.
We're gonna start with that chapter that we're so excited about, 18.z, I guess, Jessica Yamada. So this is told as you're probably aware if you're listening to this as a series of vignettes, short interlude pieces where she's essentially talking to different patients. And the first patient that PRT psychiatrist Jessica Yamada is talking to is a disabled patient who can only communicate through some sort of assistive communication technique involving eye blinks. And the person very laboriously asks for Amy. And then, of course, we realize this is Victoria. And this is the first time we realize that her mom was wrong. Victoria is indeed still in there.
Yeah, and it makes you kind of wonder if that interpretation is just wishful thinking on her part, that it's easier for her to think that her daughter's just gone, or if someone lied to her and she was led to believe that from some authority figure in the facility that was trying to pity her. There's really no textual indication one way or another, but
yeah, it could just be that they didn't even realize that like they essentially thought she was vegetative, and then they had her in the facility and she started trying to blink and they realized she was trying to communicate, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But we start this chapter off immediately with the most depressing shit I've ever read. And I love that we start off with this communication technique, and it isn't until we fully established like how much of a pain in the ass it is to communicate this way before Wildbow just starts shortcutting. Because we literally see them go through the alphabet letter by letter, arduously counting through the alphabet step by step for each letter. And it's this really good way to drive home just like how terrible of an existence Victoria is having right now. How even just talking to someone is this huge chore, and it creates empathy immediately for Victoria, and it also makes you immediately like Jessica Yamada, which I think is very important, because liking this character is central to everything in the rest of this section working.
Yeah, that's right. It emphasizes how frustrating this is, but also that she's willing to be patient for it.
Yeah.
So of course Victoria can't speak to Amy because Amy's in the birdcage, which Jessica reminds her, and Victoria becomes angry and she uses her aggro field on Dr. Yamada, and then Dr. Yamada tries to calm her down and explain that there's a good reason that Amy had to be put away, and Glory Girl responds, "I don't care." Jessica responds that was in Amy's best interests, but Victoria says that it wasn't in hers and that she's alone now.
Yeah, so it seems that whatever Amy did to Victoria's brain, she never actually fixed here. Unless we're supposed to believe that this is just her liking her sister. I tend to doubt it, right? I mean, I that's not my read at all. I don't know if what you thought.
I mean, the only other possibility is that she wants Amy to come back and put her back the way she was, which
I almost think the text specifically says that's not the reason, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think we're probably not being led to think that anyway, because if Amy were capable of doing that, then she wouldn't have left Victoria in the shape that she did.
Yeah. And it's this really key moment, because I think, at least from my perspective, we've seen all this from Amy's point of view mostly. So we're kind of on team Amy, and we like feel bad for her, and we pity everything that she's gone through. But this is a reminder that like what she did was monstrous. Like, this is horrible. And the small victory of the scene for Victoria is that she can get lowered into a bath with hoists. I mean, that's how it ends for her. And it's just this like I still love Amy. I think she's a great character, but like, this is a reminder that what she did is,
Yeah, and the bath thing, if anything, it just sort of causes you to realize that like this weird deformed flesh pile body of hers, she's sufficiently capable of like feeling in it that a bath actually feels nice, which means she's always aware of being in this flesh blob body. And it's probably pretty unpleasant.
It's a great start.
And she's invulnerable and can't be harmed. So yeah.
Great start.
Yep. Oh, but it gets better, Scott, because next on the docket is Sveta, is how I'm going to say that. AKA Garot. I think that's how you say that word. I don't ever say that word.
I say garot, but I don't know if that's right or not.
I don't either. You know, it's one of those words you read a lot, you never say.
Yeah, I know.
I rarely have occasion to use that word, luckily.
I would hope so.
So Jessica has to enter a special reinforced suit to interact with Sveta. And it's told to her that containment foam will be employed if there's any problem. So basically we're just setting up like a lot of tension and anxiety about like, okay, what exactly is she doing? She's putting on this extremely, heavy duty hazard suit to go talk to this patient, and you don't really, you're really kind of anxious about it.
Yeah, which fair based on what we learned about this person. But I love all the little details, like her code name, every single minute detail of those security measures. Yeah, it's very nerve wracking for both Jessica and us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's this moment where she says, "No, I'm scheduled to see Nicholas after," and then the nurse says, "Sad boy." Jessica didn't correct the head nurse. She hated using the code names. It reinforced the idea of the patients being less than human.
And this is the first real concrete evidence that Jessica Yamada is the greatest person in the world. Literally.
Yeah.
Also, Wadbull stole my high school nickname, Scott Sadboy Daly. I'm just kidding.
I like even the small touch that she calls it code names. She doesn't call it like cape name or superhero name or anything, because like to I'm sure the whole like villain hero thing is just obnoxious to this person, because she's trying to help these people. She's trying to see them as people. Yeah. She's trying to get rid of these labels that they love to give themselves, and these boxes they try to fit themselves into. So she's just like, not only do I not like the cape names, I'm not even going to think of them as cape names in my head.
Yeah. And the names become so important throughout the rest of this chapter too, because this difference between code names and real names is a beat that we're going to hit again and again. And so we define Yamada's opinion on them right here. So we see that she doesn't like them. And then we get to the wards later in the chapter. We're going to see how they refer to themselves, how they like to be called, and how that says something very specifically about who they are and what they're going through. And I think it's very clever to set that up here and kind of reinforce it throughout the chapter. Yeah,
absolutely. And we'll definitely get to that. So she dresses in this armored suit. And as she's doing so, she's thinking about how with experience, she's learned that safeguards such as these are essentially never going to be adequate to the dangers that she's facing. So she just kind of has to resign herself to the risks and do it anyway.
Yeah, almost as if this is immediately foreshadowing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
The beat that I really like here is a very small one, where the nurse asks her what her plans for Sunday are. And she basically says, I don't have any because I don't make plans anymore, because something is going to happen and these people are going to need me. at some point. So I'm just, why bother making plans? Yamada for president.
Yep.
2020.
She's got my vote.
I'll be on the ticket.
Yep. So she enters the room with Sveta and is immediately ambushed from above. She hears metal in her suit creak, and Sveta tries to pull herself away, genuinely apologizing, but her tendrils, of which she is made, are still contorting the suit, snapping structural members and popping airbags as Dr. Yamada tries to fake calm and walk her through relaxation exercises to calm her down, even though Dr. Yamada herself is terrified. When Dr. Yamada reminds her of her goal of having some human contact by Christmas, Garot finally lets go, attaching herself to the bed.
And here's another beat where we're like how good of a person this is. Like, she's just so good, and she's not only is she good at her job, but she's just like so kind, and it would be very easy for her to just hit the containment foam button here and just not deal with it, but she doesn't do that because she actually cares about this girl and wants her to improve.
Yeah, she's taking a huge risk just to try to help this person. So we finally get a good look at Sveta when she's on the bed, and it turns out that she's basically just a face surrounded in these swaying, super strong tendrils. I kind of imagine it a bit like an anemone with very long tendrils.
Yeah.
So I think she's probably the most unfortunate Case 53 that we've seen.
I agree. Yeah. And I think this is part of a beat that we are going to hit throughout this episode is Cauldron sucks. And we're going to do that again and again, but it almost seems like at this point we're already starting to like lay the seeds of our next big post Noelle conflict. As in after we move on from this, we got another big bad waiting in the wings already. So let's hit the beats to establish them as assholes, and this poor girl does it pretty well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of Case 53 stuff in this arc, and of course we all remember that Victoria, despite her appearance, was not a Case 53, but Sveta certainly is. Yeah. And we're going to see some more stuff about Case 53s going forward. So they begin to talk. Sveta herself thinks that she is a bad guy. She thinks of herself that way because she killed people before she was sequestered. But Dr. Yamada tells her that her power was the one that killed those people, not her. So this is an interesting perspective. There's very interesting stuff to be said here about passengers, certainly. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And I think this goes into our conversation earlier about choice and what makes you a bad person and not. And this continuing idea of how much choice do people with powers actually have. And like, this is something we're going to get again with both the clones, and then again specifically with Noelle, as she seems to be like losing control of her body to the passenger later in this episode. So this conversation with this poor little girl seems to be a great way to set up that whole discussion and kind of anchor the arc on this theme of, is it you or is it your powers, and what does that mean?
Yeah, definitely. It evokes, when we get to the end, we'll see how Noelle sort of has to almost bargain with her power, and we see Sveta kind of doing the same thing here, where she's having to not so much calm herself down as calm her passenger down, perhaps. I don't know what the right way to say that is. But,
no, I think that's right.
Yeah. So at this point, Sveta hands her a journal full of her heartbreaking dreams, and I'm not going to go into that too much, other than that it's like just like so crushing to read about, like her dreaming that she was in bed with a boy and had a normal body, and you're just like,
fuck you, Cauldron. Fuck you.
And so towards the end of their conversation, Sveta says, why aren't you scared of me? Because I have no reason to be, Jessica lied, meeting the girl's eyes. And then she thinks to herself, the truth is that it's because I've spent more time in the company of monsters than legend, she thought. Trust me, honey, you aren't the scariest I've run into, not by half.
Yeah, it's a really, really great moment. And I think that moment gets me into this whole thing. What I want to talk about here right now is, when you and I sit down to analyze literature and to kind of parse it and look through it and interpret it, one of the things we have to do is constantly ask ourselves questions to probe the work and find out what the author is trying to say. Because a novel is a world like entirely created by one person, when they show you something, when something is presented to you, there's always purpose behind it. Always. And we're going to move out from this part of the chapter and spend the rest of the time with Yamada talking to different members of the wards, the good guys. And we're going to see their varying levels of damage and trauma and how terrible their world is. And so we've seen now Victoria, former good guy, who is damaged physically and emotionally. And then, but in the middle of this, we meet this deformed but seemingly sweet little girl, who is also a murderer, is also just horribly disfigured. So we have to ask ourselves, Matt, why did Wildbow choose to have us spend time with her right here? Why is this part of the arc where we are analyzing our wards? And I think that's a really interesting question. I think, we can look through it and see, is it just to learn about Jessica Yamada? Yeah. Sure. Is it so we can contrast a Cauldron cape that can't control her power with our big bad Noelle? Is it so we can set up Cauldron as the big bad confrontation that's inevitably coming? Sure. But I think this is meant to directly contrast and even more so compare to the things that the wards are going through, that this trauma and this emotional damage, it doesn't know sides. It doesn't know, it doesn't care if you're a villain, if you're a rogue, if you're a hero. It's just a universal human trauma. And all these people are just screwed up kids just trying to do their best.
Yeah, to add to your list of things that this scene is accomplishing, we see that word monster yet again, which we've mentioned many, many times, where we have characters who are unfairly calling themselves monsters or unfairly being called monsters, or maybe even in this case, perhaps even fairly being called a monster, but she's not a bad person. She's a victim, and that's our little. Right. A little duality there, where you can be both a victim and a monster, and you can be both a hero and a monster, and you can be both a villain and a monster. It's almost a separate category of thing.
Yeah, I like that.
And then of course there's also like the usage of like there are moral monsters like Jack, and then there are physical monsters, and it's just like the word hero. It's one of these words where people can twist it to mean all kinds of things. Yeah,
I completely agree, and I like your use of duality, because I think that's, again, another beat we're going to hit again and again throughout this arc, almost immediately with how the wards name themselves.
Yeah. So let's get to that. We cut immediately to Jessica's session with Clockblocker the next morning.
Yeah, and again, we talk about Wildbow's structure a lot, and he likes to do these like sharp cuts from something to juxtapose. So like, she goes to talking to a physical looking monster, saying she's met all these other monsters, and then we cut immediately to Clockblocker. And I think surely he's not a monster, but there is intent in that segue, in the rhythm of that segue, and that he ended on that beat specifically. And I think it feels like an intentional attempt to like keep us on our toes as far as like, who is the actual monster? And that's the question you're asking yourself throughout this. It sets that up. And of course, we kind of learn specifically at the end one of the people she was specifically talking about. But I like we move into the hero side now with the word monster still in our head.
Yeah. That's really interesting that Wildbow chooses to begin with Clockblocker and not say Weld, who would be kind of the more obvious like segue from a case 53 to a case 53. We very, I think you have an excellent point that there's some calculation involved in the order in which we're getting these interludes with these.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Guys. Like I said before, I'm unreasonably excited that we're finally here, psychoanalyzing the wards. I don't think I was alone among our listeners in being giddy when you mentioned very early on that these people need therapy, and now we're actually seeing that, and it's better than we could have even hoped for.
Yeah, I got a lot of notifications on Twitter, people saying they had been waiting for this since I offhandedly said, "Hey, get therapy, people," not knowing that I had no idea we were going to actually get this. It's so kind of shocking to me that in the middle of the story we're going to stop to get this kind of interlude. But it's the depth of it is fantastic. And as you know, I love the wards. I love what they represent, and I love what they're trying to do, despite all the hopelessness of their situation. So spending more time with them here and getting to understand and know them better always makes me happy. So I'm in the bag for this completely.
Yeah. So as we've talked about, she begins by asking kind of what he wants to be called, and Clockblocker, who is our, as we kind of know, he's our sarcastic, in a certain sense, laid back guy. He answers, Clockblocker, Dennis, whatever. You get crucified, drawn, and quartered if you betray our secret identities, right? Which, for one thing, points out the fact that he's actually just indifferent toward what he's called. But as a second thing, this crucified, drawn, and quartered thing immediately made me remember the horribly maimed, dismembered victims of the Nine that were strung up against the walls in the abandoned building. And I'm like, Dennis, you're scarred. You're subconsciously scarred by that, and now you're recapitulating that now.
He's doing fine, Matt. He's fine. Yeah, I do like that it gets back to that name thing we were talking about earlier, and I think this says something very specific about Dennis. He doesn't care. To Dennis, the names are just labels, and the only thing that matters here is the consequences, as Yamada specifically notes here. To Dennis, consequences matter, not the thing itself. He doesn't care as long as the person who betrays any kind of trust behind that code name has some sort of consequence. And I think that is, not only does that line up to the Dennis conversation we had between him and Taylor last arc or last section, but it kind of creates Dennis as this natural foil to Taylor, because like Taylor is all about the thing and the consequences are kind of secondary. With Dennis, like the thing is not important. It just matters how it affects everything else. And I love that. I love it so much. Yeah,
with Taylor, I would characterize it as being about intention. She's always thinking about like why she's doing something and her best intentions that she has in mind, and often completely ignorant of the consequences, which is the one thing that Clockblocker tries to emphasize to her when he talks to her. You're right. Yeah, so Dennis is his usual self. He's sarcastic, but he's increasingly burdened by the tragedies that surround him. Mainly the pain of the people that he cares about, like his dad's sickness, Shadowstalker's downfall, the deaths of his friends by Leviathan. And he says, I feel like there's probably a word in another language, but English doesn't have it. Not despair, but that feeling you get when you're losing.
Yeah, I literally sat here for a good 5 minutes trying to see if I could come up with a good word for what he's describing. And I couldn't get it. I mean, you could say melancholy. You can say like he's despondent. I think they kind of work. But those are just also really close to despair. So I think he's right. I don't think there's a word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you know what he means. It's a very specific thing.
Yeah.
So we learn that he's been using some coping strategies to deal with his anger. He's been learning them from his other therapist. And we learned that he regrets joining the wards, which is kind of a big, kind of a shock on some level. It's the bureaucracy, the limitations that he's burdened under that the villains don't have to abide by. And he just doesn't understand how they get away with this shit. And Dr. Yamada can't answer him, but she tells him to look out for opportunities to get the answer. If only there were some opportunity for him to confront one of these villains face to face and ask them these questions.
When would that happen? We talked last week about how much Wildbow was having fun with dramatic irony, and it continues here as well. And now we understand Dennis, why he needed to question Skitter, why he pushed for it, even though he knew he would get in trouble. It adds so much clarity to the conversation and almost serves to like recontextualize it with his end goal in mind. And I wonder, knowing what we know about the source of the arguments in his head and the fact that, at least in Taylor's mindset, he made a lot of good points that kind of shook her. Do you think Dennis was satisfied with the answers he got from her?
I mean, I'm certain that he wasn't like fully satisfied. I think that he might have, like, if anything in that conversation that I walked away with, I felt like he got a sense of her as like a human being, because one thing that you get from him and you get from these other wards is that they see Skitter as this insidious, like just creature. And I think it might have actually really helped that she didn't have her bugs on her in that scene, and she's just a girl in a costume sitting in a room, sitting in a van with him. And maybe he got to see her as a human. Maybe that helped him. I don't know. I mean, it would be, I honestly don't remember if like what kind of follow up we get here. I hope that we get like more perspective from him on what that meant to him.
Me too.
I don't recall right now.
Yeah. I was trying to get you to spoil it for me, but you did good job. You did well.
Yeah. I can always just say that I don't remember something. That's a good trick that I employ.
Oh, you bastard. I knew it. I knew it.
So next up, I think the next day, is Weld. And he comes in and he's being Weld, and she wants him to pick a name, a normal like American name, but he's just fine being Weld.
Yeah, and again, following our theme of names here, Weld has no alternate identity. He has nothing else but being Weld. Cauldron took his life away from him, and Jessica, being her wonderful self here, is trying to take a name for him, to get him to take a name for himself, to become a human being, to become more than just Weld. But he either just doesn't want to, or he can't. He just like can't engage with that.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm like projecting a little bit or something, but like I feel like Weld, like in order to come to terms with being who and what he is, he's kind of had to bury a lot of the pain that comes with being in his situation, and asking him to take a normal name is kind of exposing that wound again. And he's like, no, you know what? I'm fine this way. We're not gonna entertain that kind of thing. I don't know. That's
well, I mean,
reading a lot into it.
And there's a certain level of like, if you never allow yourself to engage with your human side, then you can't be disappointed ever. Like, so like he knows how people view him as this kind of monstrous case 53, and he's accepted that and gotten used to that. But the minute you start trying to be human, and someone calls you out on your lack of humanity, then it stings because you're trying.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. So he's down about the fact that he feels the PRT is abandoning Brockton Bay. They've lost a lot of capes, as we know, which is a big blow by itself. And then those people aren't being replaced, which makes the situation worse. And, to a degree, he's also worried about his own career and how that's not looking very promising right now.
Yeah, and it's very fitting that he is really the only one that brings up his career as a superhero out of all the wards that Jessica talks to. And I don't say this as like an insult. It's just really, it's all he has. He doesn't have that human side. There is no non-code name. So his career is everything, literally.
Yeah, right. That's he is Weld. Yeah, He is the PRT Cape Weld, yeah. But before we can get too deep into Weld, unfortunately, his phone rings, and we start to get a sense of where we are in time, because immediately next up is Flechette, and she's pissed off because Parian has just been suborned by the Undersiders.
Yeah, and I love that Weld not getting to complete his therapy fits into everything we've said already, because he gets pulled out of this session because of his job, because Weld doesn't have time for mental health. Weld doesn't have time to be a human being. Weld is Weld 24/7, so he gets pulled out. And they even hit that beat again where he has to reschedule his therapy session later, that they mentioned that offhand. And I love that. Like, he just like this, he doesn't have time. He can't, like, it's not possible.
Yeah. I really like that observation. So yeah, like I said, next up, same day, Lily Flechette comes in, and she has to be calmed down because she's raging about what just happened with Parian, and she admits to Dr. Yamada that she still hasn't told Saba about her feelings for her. By the time she got up the courage to ask about it, the Nine had murdered most of Parian's family and friends and turned the rest into decoys.
I mentioned this while I was live tweeting, but it's this really kind of like it's so disturbing that it almost makes you laugh in kind of a dark comedy way, because like she's like talking about like, yeah, and I just didn't know if she felt the same way. And then like I was going to ask her, but then her whole family was horribly murdered and disfigured. So you can't ask someone then. And it's just like this completely like typical like crush conversation placed into this world of death and horribleness. And it's just like the juxtaposition is so shocking that you just laugh at it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do like that as black humor.
Yeah. To continue our name theme, I did want to point out that she's never referred to as Flechette throughout this entire chapter. She's Lily from the beginning to the end. And notice that all of the problems Lily's talking about here are human ones, mostly centering around her feelings for Parians. And this is intentional. How we're framing these characters through their names is an intentional tool to show where they are as people.
Yeah, that's right. So in the course of this, she focuses a lot on her anger at Skitter, mentioning how Skitter slithers in past her defenses by sounding idealistic and naive. And she has with her her satchel containing the armband that Skitter told her where to find, the one that Armsmaster shorted out.
Yeah, and I actually forgot that that's what that was, and there was part of me that was like, what's in the satchel? Is this going to be a mystery? And then on my second read through, I was like, oh yeah, it's that thing. And of course, she hasn't looked at it yet. She like hasn't worked up the courage to look at it yet. Mm-hmm. We're not going to read it, but her description, both physically and just of like Taylor's ideology, is so amazing. I love it so much. Like the part I like is like something's wrong with their eye and your own eye starts watering when looking at her. Like that's such a wonderful description. It's so great. And like this idea of Taylor being seen as creepy on the outside, idealistic and naive on the inside is just Taylor. I mean, that's like, and I think this ties into the important thing about her is that she's never, kind of like Krauss in this, she's never purposefully trying to manipulate people by lying or anything. It just kind of ends up that way. Like, because when she talks to people, she is being 100% earnest because she is idealistic, she is naive, and she does wholeheartedly believe the things that she's saying, even when they come off as kind of disturbing sometimes, or inaccurate, or off base, or influenced by her own brand of trauma-related issues. Like, she believes the things she says, and you can understand why everyone's just so confused by her when she talks like this.
Yeah, right. I mean, essentially, when what she's saying boils down to, everything would be fine if everyone would just listen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. At this point, Lily cries on Dr. Yamada's shoulder, but the hug is interrupted by her phone ringing. Again, we have a meeting interrupted, and this time it's Miss Militia. Dr. Yamada answers actually because Lily can't, informing us that Skitter, once again, has put Triumph in the hospital.
Just great timing. Right after we talk about how she can't understand this idealistic supervillain, she called to let her know that I'd like this beat because they don't even say it's Skitter. They just say what happened to Triumph, and Lily is immediately like, Skitter? Like, she just knows. Mm-hmm. The beat I really like here, though, is when we see Lily basically transform literally back into Flechette. She straightens up, she dries her eyes out, and there is, quote, wasn't a trace of the emotion she'd shown just moments before. It's this really small but powerful beat, and you see that Jessica is heartbroken by this, that Lily is not allowed to be Lily, that in the moment of working through her problems, she has to just put them away and become this cape again. And it's reinforcement, Matt, that these powers, this being a cape just perpetuates this trauma, that it doesn't let these people ever get better. And their powers or their passengers won't let them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, Dr. Yamada is conscious of this too. She doesn't want to just let this slide, and she calls Miss Militia, and she says, yes, I've seen half your wards today. They aren't doing well. I know, Miss Militia said. They're losing faith. I know. It's
yeah.
And Miss Militia, being who she is, like, we have to believe she she sees the problem that this is just as much as Dr. Yamada does. But since she herself is a cape, she's presumably been dealing with this type of thing for, I don't know how old she is, but 10 years, I would estimate, right? Something like that.
And
yeah.
And there's nothing anyone can do about it. Like, there's no solution to this problem. Like, the city, like, there's so much going on that they're constantly being pulled into that these therapy sessions on their own are not enough. It's just not enough. So you're just in this moment of absolute hopelessness. And the fact that Jessica continues to strive to help these people through this hopelessness is really what makes her heroic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So next we get Kid Win. He comes in. My
favorite buddy.
Yeah, he really won us over. So he doesn't really get the point of therapy, and he says, all my problems so far, they've stemmed from me trying to fit myself into everyone else's mold. It's only when I broke away from that, started thinking on my own, that things started to make sense. All the pieces of the machine working in unison.
Yeah. So obviously, once again, he's referred to as himself by Kid Win. He's fully identifying as his cape side. We don't even hear his real name, which do you remember what his real name is? I don't.
No, I'm spacing right now.
Yeah. But I think that fits into what he's kind of saying here, that he has dove into his work and he is satisfied because he's finally successful in his work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, he admits that he's actually happier now with the city in shambles, and he doesn't want to be talked out of it. And then he kind of, fairly rudely puts on headphones and kicks back to basically just work on his tinker stuff instead of proceed with the therapy. I'm not really sure what direction to take this in, actually.
Yeah, I think there's two possible interpretations of what's going on here. One is that he's being completely 100% sincere here, that ever since he had that talk with Legend, he's refocused himself and discovered how to fully use his form of the Tinker power, and has thus managed to solve his issues, the things that were making him insecure and were causing him pain. And then, therefore, while everyone else is falling apart, that trauma doesn't represent itself in him because his trauma stems from being incompetent, which he seems to have cured. That's, like, to me, a little too good to be true. That's based on everything else we've seen. So I think the other is that this is just, classic deflection and avoidance. He's refusing to deal with his issues and just coping by diving into his work. And as long as he can be Kid Win, as long as he doesn't have to stop being Kid Win, he's fine. And I think that sounds more real to me, but I don't know if I'm getting that through textual evidence or just what I want it to be.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that there's some combination of the two, and I can actually identify with this quite a bit. Like there were times in my life where I wasn't having the best time, and I realized that diving into my work at that time happened to be just a wonderful reprieve, because when you're working really hard and your work is going well, you're rewarded by it in a way that maybe other aspects of your personal life aren't rewarding you. So it's like you're getting a kind of positive feedback, a kind of confidence, a kind of self-esteem even from the work, and it is genuine, but it is not a holistic, healthful psychological approach, because ultimately you're doing it to paper over a delinquency somewhere else in your mental hygiene. So that actually makes perfect sense to me, that that pep talk from Legend did work. He is more confident now. He is being a more successful tinker. He's making more things. We've seen, every time we've seen him, almost, he has like some new cool thing. But he's doing that at the expense maybe of a more kind of holistic, I guess, approach to keeping his head on his shoulders.
Yeah, I think that sounds right, and I think that ties into all the name stuff we've been talking about. Is the name what name they choose is a symbol of that, and I think that's important. Yeah,
he's Kid Win. He has to be Kid Win. He has to be. Yeah. Okay. So next we have Vista the next day on Saturday. Vista enters her office and then struggles to get comfortable in a chair, which is overlarge for her 12-year-old body.
Yeah, I mentioned this on Twitter, but I wanted to bring it up again here. Wildbow is really good, and we've talked about this before, but he's really good at taking every possible moment he has to characterize. And I think this is a real like common writing lesson, that every beat can be a character beat if you use it properly. And so this is a tiny little beat, just a little girl who can't get comfortable in a chair. But in this case, it tells or reminds us of Vista's most basic insecurity. Her most basic problem is that she's perpetually afraid that she's being judged as lesser because of her age, that she's not being taken seriously, that she's treated as the kid, the child, the one that is different from all the rest. And that, like, that's all there in that one little beat of her trying to get comfortable in a big chair.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's so good. It's so good. And then we go back to our name thing again. Vista, like, I think it says something too when we hear that they're offered a choice. Like, Kid Win just walked in and said, "I'm Kid Win." There was never a choice. What do you want me to call you? Here, Jessica specifically says, "Should I call you Missy or Vista?" And of course, Vista chooses Vista because she doesn't like. Missy is such a perfect name for her. It fits into her childish like concern so much, because it's this kind of pet kind of nickname. Like, it's infantilizing a little bit. I don't. There might be some adults out there named Missy who I just insulted, but it just seems like a childish name to me. So of course she's going to choose Vista. Of course that's the one she's going to pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she wants to project this image of being the strong, competent Kate who doesn't need to hide behind her civilian identity. She's trying to project that, right, like always.
Right.
So she from the beginning is preoccupied with the idea that Dr. Yamada can't really understand what it's like for the wards because she doesn't live in Brockton Bay.
Yeah, and it's a fair point, but I love Yamada's response here, that it doesn't really matter if she understands what it's like out there. All that matters is that she understands what's going on through Vista's head in this moment, and that the only way she can really understand that is if the Vista opens up to her and talks about it, and that works. It gets Vista to open up a little. Yeah.
And she does take a really excellent approach here. She kind of has to work her way toward it. But basically, Dr. Yamada gets her to tell about how she's been trying to help the other wards with their problems, and she often can't. And Jessica asks if she feels like a field therapist. And at first, Vista finds this condescending, because she pretty much finds everything condescending.
Yeah.
But eventually, she opens up and admits that she's trying to be the team's heart, like Weld said all those arcs ago.
Yeah. And that condescending beat, to me, that was absolutely projection, that she was putting that on Jessica, that Jessica in no way, I don't think there's any contextual evidence, in my opinion, that says that Jessica is speaking to her in a childish manner. I don't know if you agree or not, but
I mean, I think that she's just speaking to her using like the therapeutical
right,
paradigm of minimizing, injecting her own opinions and just kind of asking questions and leading the other person to make their own discoveries, which can come off as condescending,
especially if you're specifically tuned to it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I had to pull this out because this is Vista telling us all of the things that have happened, and she's saying it's like a series of hammer blows. It's Aegis died, Gallant died, Battery died, Velocity died, Dauntless died, Browbeat left, Armsmaster retired, and Shadowstalker went to jail. And now, even after it's all over, Triumph gets hurt. And like when you just say it out like that, you're like, I'm not even sure if I could handle this story if it were from the perspective of a ward. It's too sad.
Yeah, and for me, this was the first time that I fully got Clockblocker's frustration, because the heroes are ostensibly the good guys, right? But they're the ones that keep suffering the consequences of everyone else's actions. Because how many Undersiders are dead? How many Travelers are dead? Yeah. Who's the one instigating all the violence? Who's the one instigating all the actions? And who are the ones suffering for it? And you see this when you list all these things. It's incredible.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know if we've ever, speaking of the name game, I don't know if we've ever talked about the name, the wards, because it's that's another word that has multiple meanings. Obviously, like to ward something is to protect something, and you can view them as protectors. But I don't think that's the primary meaning. I think the primary meaning is that they're the wards in the sense that Robin is Batman's ward. They are under the protection of the adult capes.
Yeah.
So to list off all these heroes being dead or you know, otherwise unfortunate. Some of them being wards, some of them being the heroes. I don't know, for some reason when I view it in context of like this is the what is it? These are the Teen Titans. Like these aren't even this isn't even the big leagues, and they're suffering these horrible losses. It really I don't know. This quote where she pulls out where she just lists all the dead is just really hits me for some reason.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think the fact that she's not differentiating between a ward name and a full-on protectorate name is telling. Is that they're not really wards anymore. These are just the heroes now, and they all share at an adult level responsibility, and a lot of them are still children. And it's easy to forget that because the situation demands that we ignore it because they need them, that there's just not enough people and they need them, and it's destroying these kids.
Yeah. So part of Missy wants to keep the team together, but another part knows that won't happen, that more people will die. And she says that part is okay with it because essentially, I mean, she's not really, but she says she is. She's wrapped up in it. She's wrapped up in this like nihilism surrounding the pending end of the world. And that's just the way the world works. She thinks that she's sure that she's going to die too. Everybody's going to die. So why worry about it?
And we're playing with dramatic irony again here a little bit, right? Because we know the current present day situation Vista in is that she's captured and being forced to be a cloning machine for Noelle. First we thought she was dead, and now she's just being used to spawn these terrible clones. But she still might end up dead at the end of this whole thing. So while her nihilism is absolutely concerning and depressing, it's maybe not too far off, is it?
Yeah. It's just not healthy.
Definitely not.
Yeah. But I mean, you're right that it's not, it's very understandable. Yeah. So Dr. Yamada tells her that she'll give her some tools, that she can use to help with her field therapy. And I get the sense at this point that Vista actually feels like she's being respected by this offer, so she accepts the help.
Yeah, and I want to focus for a second on just how fucking good of a therapist Yamada is here, because Vista's this poor damaged girl that's actually very difficult to read, and Yamada immediately diagnoses the problem, that Vista feels marginalized, she feels like the kid of the group, and everyone talks down to her. So how do you treat that? Well, you make someone feel as if they are not that. You make someone feel as if they're contributing. So she pushes towards Vista's active role in the group, and she pivots away from the nihilism and towards that. You pivot to talk to her about better ways in which she can be the therapist of the group, in which she can be the heart of the group, and it works. And it pushes Vista towards that little tinge of hope at the end of her section.
Yeah. It's really hard to be a nihilist when you're trying to help other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next section is actually the next day, and Jessica is woken in the middle of the night and called in to the hospital, and then that's practically all that really happens, other than getting a description of what her living situation is like and how kind of depressing it is.
Yeah, and it's so depressing. It's like the little beats that she's got pizza box on her nightstand, so she's eating in bed. The fact that she was only wearing pants to answer the door to get the pizza. Like her entire life is just these kids. She eats in bed, she works in bed, she never takes off. She's always there. And you kind of get in this moment that as it's destroying these kids, what they're having to go through, this is kind of destroying her. But
yeah,
she keeps doing it. She keeps trying, and that is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this great interlude. So next day, she's in Brockton Bay, but there's nobody to help because the wards are too busy dealing with the aftermath of the bombing at the mayoral debate.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time to get to one of the overall great ways in which this interlude works. We're seeing from someone else's perspective every single one of Skitter's successes. Like, we're seeing all of her wins. Every time she does good, every time she makes a choice and something happens, we're seeing all of this from the perspective of the people that are actually suffering the consequences from it. And it's so great because we had this whole part where Clockbacker was talking to her about how you don't see the consequences. You don't stick around long enough to see what your actions actually do to the people around you. And as if to confirm that, here they are. And like, Taylor made these choices and the people she cares about come out on top in the end, but we don't see the real cost of that. We don't see what it's doing to these kids. And that's kind of, we're seeing like an abridged, fast-forwarded version of everything that Taylor's gone throughout the last few weeks from a different perspective. And it's a horrible one.
Yeah, right. And we finally really get to feel it, because even, she let herself feel bad about almost killing Triumph for about 10 seconds, and then she kind of distracted herself.
Shoved in that compartment.
Right. And here we're shown, I think it's kind of a dramatic trick that I'm learning that the power of is you can make somebody feel something a lot better, not by showing it to them, but by showing the suffering that it causes in other people around that person. So what I mean specifically is, like, you can show me Triumph, almost dying of anaphylaxis, but it actually pulls at the heartstrings more if you show Flechette freaking out about the fact that her teammate is potentially dying. And that connects it better, I think, on an empathic level.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And that's the technique that's being employed over and over again here. I think, like you pointed out, it's where we really get to both see and feel the consequences of her actions. So the subsequent day, you get the sense Jessica hasn't really been able to help anybody very much, but she's kind of worn thin regardless, and she's smoking on top of the roof, I guess, of the headquarters. And Eidolon appears behind her, and he asks for a moment of her time. There's this moment here where she thinks she felt a pang of sympathy for her wards, and I had to pull that out because at this point it's her wards, not the wards.
Jessica is the best. She's so great.
Yeah.
What a wonderful, heartbreaking beat.
I know. I love that so much. Yeah, so she's so caught up with sympathy in what her wards are going through that she isn't sure in this moment if she can offer them objective therapy. But Eidolon is here, and he's not one of the wards, and frankly, it's a very different matter with him. So he sits beside her, and he takes off his mask, showing his average, slightly ugly, middle-aged face, and she's overwhelmed by the power of his presence, by the danger inherent in what he is, which I think is interesting because that's not something that Skitter really dwells on when she's around.
Yeah,
Eidolon specifically, and really whoever she's around, she's so used to being around, and not only being around but fighting these people, that she doesn't feel intimidated by it. But
yeah, that's very true.
Dr. Yamada thinks of Eidolon as a monster. I think she uses that word in her mind, which is very reminiscent of what some of our other non-cape POVs like Bigot have thought about capes in general.
Yeah, not only does she use the word monster, but she specifically calls back to her conversation with Sveta, where she thought, I'm not scared by you because I've seen real monsters. And here's the most powerful superhero in the world, outside of Scion, standing in front of her, and she says monster. And of course she's speaking generally, right? That he's got this monstrous power. He's on the good side, but he's over almost otherworldly and not quite human. But it's also kind of perceptive because he's a cauldron guy, and he's working for this group that we keep hitting these beats about how terrible they are and what they did to poor Sveta, who she cares about so much, and what they stole Weld's human name. Like there's a kind of a complete circle here. So she's calling him monstrous generally, but the truth is even worse than she knows.
Yeah, right. And not only so, not quite that extreme, but like even the way he behaves is very subtly inhuman and just like aloof. Like skipping ahead a couple beats, he says like I used a power to see into the last few days of your life to get an understanding of who you are, and it's like, dear God, that's like the most invasive thing imaginable, and he just does it. He does it very casually. He does it with the same degree of disregard that he like sets up that force field in the last arc, in the last half arc, where he almost starts a fight and like there's an argument that he just didn't even think about it. He's just like, I'm just going to set up this force field now because I don't care. I don't care if I make other people uncomfortable. He can afford to think that way. It's kind of the, absolute power.
It's Dr. Manhattan-esque, right? You get to a certain level of power and you're so far above everyone else that you stop being able to relate to them on a human level. So you just don't consider that kind of stuff anymore.
We saw a little bit of that from Alexandria.
Yeah.
And she has that thinker power where she remembers things and she thinks better and she has that invulnerability that sets her apart from people. But Eidolon, like, he has essentially whatever he needs at the moment. And that must just really warp your way of thinking after a while.
And to go back to that beat of looking in her past too, not only is it an invasion of her privacy, but her past few days have been her talking with these wards. So it's an incredible invasion of these kids' privacy and their personal therapy sessions. It's like, it's so invasive and terrible to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't. I think I might have noticed that the first time I read this, and then I missed it this time through. But you're absolutely right. That's clearly, he says the last few days, which completely encompasses all of these private, painful therapy sessions that we've seen.
You could argue that the entirety of this interlude is just Eidolon's looking at her last few days, and that's the structure behind it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and also, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And you could also say that like one purpose for arranging things this way is to dose Eidolon with this information about how the wards are doing, and just the pain of all of that, so that that's kind of festering in his mind.
Yeah. And that kind of encourages him to act even more recklessly than he was already planning. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. Yeah, so to go kind of back on track, the reason why he's talking to her is that, as we know, his powers are weakening day by day, and when he can't stand up to the Endbringers, only Scion will really be left as an effective counterforce. But when he's fighting a serious threat, he feels that there's some source of more power within reach, and he wants to fight Noelle today because he's desperate to tap into that. And he feels confident that even if things go south, the situation with Noelle could be resolved with a missile strike, which is just what Brockton Bay needs right now.
Oh my God. This whole part you just read has the distinct pleasure of making me both really sad and really angry at the same time. Because I think you're sad for Eidolon, who's like, his burden as the second most powerful person in the world is rivaled only by our boy Kevin. And so like, he has this huge burden on him, and that he's so defined his life by Eidolon, to go back to our whole name thing we've been talking about all chapter, that he's defined that as his entire life, that if he loses his power, then life just isn't worth living anymore. And that's so sad, and that you feel for him in that moment. But of course, I'm also angry. I'm angry that in this recklessness, he's going to put his city, his wards, innocent people in harm's way, and he seems to not care about the consequences of those actions, just the actions themselves, just the end result, and that's not good, Matt.
Best intentions, Scott.
Yeah. So we're at the end of this section now, and we're an hour and 10 minutes into the podcast, and I love that we spent this time on this, because I loved it so much. And I think there's even more here. There's more that we could do if we wanted to. I think we need to move on, but I feel that this is a part of the book I'm going to come back to again and again as we move forward, that I'm going to constantly be checking back and referencing what we learned here and what this part of the story did for us and what it set up, either obviously or more slyly. And Jessica Yamada, man, she's the best of us. She's the best of everyone. She's like, out of all the humans we've seen in this book so far, she is the most heroic one.
Yeah, that's interesting. We didn't get any kind of like, terrible secret that she's holding on to. And yeah, just to reflect your comment that like I'm glad that we actually spent that much time on that, because I don't know if I ever like say this out loud, but like fundamentally the reason why I enjoy this project and other projects that we do like this is that I'm like studying works of art that I really like in order to figure out how they work and why they work, and to learn their tricks, to learn the storytelling craft. And this chapter is just so rich with little bits of writing machinery that can be analyzed, that it absolutely merits an hour of detailed discussion.
And the thing is that, I mean, I can't say this for sure, but I think if you look back on this chapter, you could probably completely remove it and it wouldn't damage any of the overall storytelling. Of course, I don't know that for sure, but it seems like it's kind of that chapter where all this really does is help you recontextualize and redefine characters. We're not really learning anything story-wise new. We're just spending time with characters. So the fact that it's here is showing to me what the true purpose of the book is, what Wildbow wants to do. It's not just about these big action sequences. It's not just about fighting and superpowers. It's about people and what people are going through and what this world does to people.
Yeah, and it's not just about Taylor. It's about all of these people. And we get relatively few, bits of the, Clockblocker story, but I do think that the book would be harmed, for example, like in terms of giving, I'm just taking him as an example, like his narrative would be kind of missing a piece, I think, if you took this out. Maybe you would have to come in later, but yeah, it's like you said, it's one of the main strengths of Worm is this ensemble way of telling the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unfortunately leave it behind and get to the rest of the arc. Yeah,
which is some badass combat mostly. So we get into 18.7 and we cut right back to Eidolon, who we were just with, as Skitter listens in on his conversation with Noelle. He's telling her that Coil was involved with Cauldron and that Cauldron is responsible for Noelle.
Called it. Just want to put that here. I called that.
Yep. Or so Eidolon claims. How would he know? So it seems that Eidolon is offering help, but Noelle doesn't seem to believe the offer. And she says that she wants to die, and he says that he's ready to die too.
Oh, good. We have two suicidal, superpowered individuals. This will go well, and no one will suffer at all. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, this will be a nice clean fight. She reveals that they're surrounded by her clones, which had been sort of hiding in nearby surfaces using a Vista spin-off power. Elite with a Tinker-made gun is setting up in a building behind Eidolon, and it looks like he's going to get the drop on him.
Is this the first time in Worm that Elite was an actual threat? Is this it?
I mean, it's probably because he doesn't have his filters on. He's just evil now. I bet Elite would actually be really, really effective if he just were pure evil. But the Undersiders, plus the two Chicago wards who they're with, argue about whether to intervene. The Undersiders want to step in now, but the wards want to hold off to avoid messing up whatever Eidolon's plan is, and be ready to kill any Eidolon clones that might pop up if he gets touched. They don't really know how she works quite yet. Skitter starts using her power to try to disable Elite's gun, while Noelle and Eidolon stall in their conversation. And they're stalling because Eidolon is waiting for his powers to charge up, and Noelle is waiting for Elite to shoot him.
Yeah, I really like this beat a lot. It's really fantastically done because we're about to kick everything into high gear, but we pause for this moment of tension building as two of the most powerful beings basically just stare each other down, waiting for the right moment to attack. It's this tension building face-off moment, and it's really good.
Yeah. So the elite clone tries to fire, but Skitter has done enough damage to make the weapon backfire.
Even his clone, still useless.
So Eidolon opens with an attack that shakes the ground where the Undersiders are sitting in the van. Skitter can't really perceive what's going on other than that most of her bugs in the area die instantly. And the Ubers and circus clones are pulverized against the ground, and essentially everything in the area is just crushed. And eventually we kind of get that this is some kind of gravity attack. But while Skitter doesn't really notice anything, Tattletale is suddenly panicked and is saying, did he hit Imp? We just sent Imp in there. And it's this unusual moment of intensity from Tattletale.
Yeah, and I got to thinking, I wonder if this ties into the source of Tattletale's trauma, because we know how concerned she's always gets for Taylor's safety, and we've never seen her really do that with anyone else. And I made a big speculation about the root behind that is, but I wonder if it's a signal that Lisa has brought Aisha into that kind of inner circle and occupy that same "I am seriously worried for you" thing, because we haven't seen that before.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm definitely gonna hold that as probably the most likely explanation for now. Yeah, and so another thing about this moment with Aisha being missing is that this is the first time that I can recall where we missed the scene that we sort of normally would have gotten regarding Imp. Like normally we see the interaction with Imp and then Taylor forgets it and we don't forget it. or sometimes at least like it's worked around in a way where it's not quite this on the nose. This time we didn't see it at all.
Yeah. And I'm okay with it though. It's a logical extension of Imp's awesome power that allows us to build and release tension without masking it in any kind of artificial fake way. And it works. It always works. She's a great plot device to build tension. It's really clever, actually.
Yeah. And I just realized, Scott, she may actually be so powerful at this point in the story that we did actually read about the part where she left the Undersiders in the van.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I mean, maybe that's right there on the page.
I don't know what to do.
You could go back and check, but it wouldn't matter.
We just forget about it again.
Let's just move on. This is freaking me out. Okay, so Noelle doesn't seem to be enjoying the gravity attack very much, but she is able to walk through it despite the damage she's taking. Imp sneaks up on the Elite with the gun and she cuts his throat, which confuses Eidolon quite a bit, but he gets over it. He's probably used to crazy shit like this happening. The Elite falls off of the building, dragging his massive gun with him, which explodes enormously on impact with the ground. Eidolon then chases Noelle as she moves away at high speed, moving more by massive strength and redundancy than agility like a rhino. So the Undersiders make their way up the building to recover Imp. Everything has been kind of shattered by the explosion. And Skitter perceives that Noelle is able to produce more circus clones despite not being in contact with circus. And none of the Undersiders are really sure why this is at first. Did you have a thought at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of guess she was storing them somewhere somehow. I didn't think she was literally eating them and keeping them in a clone-producing tummy sack, which is what ends up happening. But I think she was just like shoving them somewhere in her mass and then just making them touch her every time she needed a new one, was my assumption. The reality is much cooler and grosser.
Yeah, I don't remember what I thought, but yeah. So they find Imp, and she's kind of out of sorts. She's got a blown eardrum. Gru verifies that she doesn't have a head injury and then gives her a thump on the head, which I think is a nice sibling moment between them.
Yeah, and it feels like a kind of a little mini moment of growth from Gru, too, because he's still, of course, always going to be his overprotective brother. It's just who he is. But in the past, he would have like really lost his shit and like screamed at her and chastised her and belittled her. This time, he kind of just thumps her on the head and is like, hey, obey orders. Like you feel kind of like a level of respect there now. Like she's proved herself so capable that he respects her on some level.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I actually think there might be a moment of growth from Imp in that she doesn't react to his little brotherly thump by taking umbrage. and getting offended. She's just like, ow, stop that. I made the right call. She just kind of confidently says, I made the right call. And so she's kind of finding a little bit of confidence maybe. And I think this is interesting because this is her taking the initiative again. She makes a good play and she gets injured for it, but it was kind of all she could do. And nobody gives her credit.
Yeah, she's really crazy powerful. And we've seen this kind of ramp up in usefulness over the course of the arc since she was introduced. But because she's the baby of the group, yeah, she gets no respect.
Yeah. So Skitter, still, keeping her bug eye on the fight, reports that Eidolon and Noelle are dueling with Noelle, and Noelle is pasting her clones against adjacent surfaces when he attacks with the gravity hammer. Tecton lets us know that Eidolon can pack 3 serious powers at a time. I'm not sure if we knew that necessarily. And it seems like he has flying, danger sense, and gravity manipulation, though Tattletale suspects that the flying is part of gravity manipulation and he might also have some kind of power immunity. So Eidolon is smashing down skyscrapers left and right, just trying to get like a single circus clone here and there. And then he keeps using the gravity to scrape all the bugs off of himself. And then he starts spiking bits of buildings into the air and then slamming them down at Noelle.
Yeah, it's almost as if he's like trying intentionally to go all out in order to force his body to tap into some deep well of power or something. So he's not killing anyone. I think they specifically mentioned that the buildings he's destroying are empty and he is using his danger sense power to be able to know that or something. But this poor city, Matt, like Brockton Bay, yeah. Is there any building standing in Brockton Bay left? Like, it's gone through so much of the shit. It just keeps happening.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was like imagining this being in like a rundown part of town where there were no people, but then we fairly quickly get like corroboration that there are civilians kind of here and there that he's having to avoid. So just imagine, I don't know, I always like to imagine living in this hellhole city and having things like this happen all the time. So Noelle spits out another Leet and Vista clone, and Skitter decides the priority is to make a perimeter around the area and take out the clones. So she goes after a Leet clone with her bugs as he breaks into a clothing store and starts dressing himself because these things are being humanized and actually want to wear clothes. Mm-hmm. And she realizes at this point that there are also clone rats running around. So she starts exterminating those as well.
Who would have thought that freaky Skitter extermination service beat from arcs and arcs ago would pay off?
Yeah, practice. So Noelle attacks a huddle of civilians in a building lobby, and she absorbs all of them, and then almost immediately, after just a minute and a half, vomits out a mass of clones. So basically 18 to 20 people she vomits out, and about half of them are clones. So the mutants immediately start wailing on the originals, and Skitter realizes that one of the people that's been vomited out is the original Vista. And then Noelle hauls her back in, and we realize that indeed Noelle is keeping the originals so she can make endless numbers of clones.
Yeah, I really hope that they're like unconscious when they're inside her tummies getting cloned. I suspect we'll find out next week for a reason that we'll get to.
Yes, I suspect so as well. As the chapter wraps up, Skitter realizes that Noelle is also cloning bugs, which she can't sense or control.
Yeah, this is a cool way to end the chapter, I think, and I think it makes sense as she's using insects to figure out where she is, so they're touching her, she's absorbing them and making her own. So it does do kind of a good job of taking Skitter out of any direct conflict with Noelle, because she really can't. But if I can offer a really minor complaint here, Matt, the clone bugs never really pay off in that big of a moment, at least not yet. The cliffhanger ending here seems to indicate that like the fact that there are cloned bugs that Skitter can't control is going to be this huge problem now. Taylor just kind of feels bad, and then in the next chapter she just starts like systematically killing them with her own bugs, and it just never like pays off in a way that it seemed like it was going to.
Yeah, I think I feel you there. I definitely expected there to be some like direct consequence. I mean, like the closest thing I think we get is that I think there's an implication that the reason Eidolon keeps killing her bugs is that he's trying to kill the psychotic bugs that are going after him, and she doesn't even realize that's happening.
Yeah, but that doesn't have any kind of lasting effect on him,
right? Other than maybe like interfering with her ability to perceive the battle, it doesn't seem to. I mean, we may get something in the next arc where that actually matters. I don't remember. But yeah, I agree. In this arc, there's certainly no like oh no, it's so terrible this happened type consequence.
Yeah. It's almost as if like the fact that she felt guilty about it matters more than the actual it happening, which could just be again us exploring Taylor's guilt.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because she does feel really bad about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we moved on, though, I wanted to mention, like, someone told me, it might have been you actually, that the chapter tags at the bottom of each chapter that list all the names of the characters that appear have the names of the clones in them, and they're really fun, and I like them a lot, and I just wanted to make sure we call them out as we get to them.
Yeah, go for it.
So Vista's clone is named Scape, like landscape, I guess, which is very clever.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's probably like a root or something.
Yeah.
It's probably like looked it up. It doesn't. Yeah, that's probably what it is. Yeah.
And Leets is named Pone, which is perfect. And Uber's is Unter, which is German for under, which is the opposite of Uber. And Circus is named Carne, which is, I love that. So great.
I think that's my favorite one, actually.
Yeah. It's just like
it's like the twisted evil version of Circus. Yeah.
And it's this it's this little detail that like he threw in there. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't matter. I think most people reading the story won't even see it, but it's fun. I like it.
Yeah, right.
Wildbow loves names.
I mean, it's fun. It allows you to like discuss the particular clones and
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, it's just the names are just endlessly rewarding to think about.
Yeah.
We enter in on chapter 18.8, and Skitter is really put off her stride upon realizing that she's enabled Noelle to make swarms of aggressive black widows and hornets. As we just talked about, she feels really bad about this, although we don't really see much of a consequence from it in this arc, at least. The team decides to mop up the rest of the clones, the most of which are unpowered ones, and then move on to help Eidolon with Noelle. And it seems like he's backing off right now, perhaps switching out powers.
Yeah. This is a really good battle, and it really shows how I think Wildbow has grown while he was writing on how he writes big, expansive battlefield type conflicts, because we have these two like gods almost fighting each other, but we are on the ground. We are with Skitter, who's kind of the street level fighters fighting off Noelle's troops, which are the clones. And I think it adds to the realism of the battle. Like, you can imagine them doing this stuff in the foreground, while in the background you're seeing explosions and the fighting of the gods behind them as they fight. And I think it's really effective, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that Skitter is our POV character once again, because she allows us to watch the fight between Eidolon and Noelle while doing other things because of her sensory power.
Yep.
And there's actually a moment, I don't remember what chapter it's in exactly, where as she's like reporting what's going on all over the place, the two Chicago wards kind of look at each other like, holy crap, she can, not only can she do all the other stuff, but I didn't realize she had this like battlefield awareness.
Yeah.
So
she's also still blind. Let's not forget that. Actually ties into an interesting thing of, we still haven't seen what Noelle looks like.
Yeah.
Because we're in Taylor's head and Taylor can't see her. We get little hints. Like, I think there's one thing that they say her bottom half looks similar to Rachel's dog's, but we don't get a full description of what she looks like yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really clever thing. Like, there's this fighting and she's there, but we can't see her yet.
Yeah, right. Because every time the bugs touch her, they get absorbed. So she's just kind of a blind spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tattletale and Imp at this point split off, so Tattles can use a computer and Imp can take a breather. Skitter and Rachel end up stretching a chain between the two dogs that they're riding, and they clothesline all of the clones, who are mostly standing already, whereas the originals are lying down still. Skitter pulls free the only human in the pile, and they make Rachel tells Bastard to hurt and Bentley to kill.
Yeah, that's a very interesting beat here. And I think it's obvious that we're being pointed out that for a very specific reason. And probably the most likely answer to this is that your dog being trained to kill something is a big step, and the not fully trained Bastard is just not ready to be able to do that. To be sure, we're under controlled, safe circumstances. But you could also read it that this is the pup Bastard that Rachel feels the closest to, and she doesn't want him to have to be a killer just yet. That might just be me reading into it, but I like it, so I'm gonna headcanon it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know enough about wolves, but it may be that like if you teach a wolf to kill people, then it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever.
I just do that now.
Yeah, right. Whereas maybe a dog will always have a hesitancy to kill people.
I mean, that's probably the reason, but I like mine.
Yeah, I like yours too. So Skitter then takes on the 3 remaining evil clones who are still thrashing their originals.
Oh boy.
And she's thinking to herself, they're not people, they're mockeries. The small, helpless sounds she made as blood bubbled around the throat wound weren't helping my attempts to assuage my conscience. Damn Noelle, damn her for making me do this. You leave Steph alone, the fat clone bellowed. So at this point, Skitter engages this clone in conversation while fighting. And it's interesting that we get this bit about the psychology of the clones here. And how they do indeed have feelings. It's just that their feelings are engineered to be maximally destructive. So this guy hates and resents the original Steph and his original self, but he seems to have transferred his feelings of protectiveness towards the clone Steph.
Yeah, and if for some reason you thought that Wildbow was not intentionally humanizing the clones last week, then this whole beat is for you. And this is when it basically formally declares that, yes, we are trying to humanize these monsters and show that they are still human beings. Because in the middle of this huge battle, our main character stops to chat with one and tries to reason with him. Of course, he can't be reasoned with. It was created to destroy. It's its only function. And it is heartbreaking in a way. Like I said last week, yes, we need to stop them. Probably we need to kill them. But we should feel bad about it. And I'm glad that Taylor does.
Yeah, I mean, isn't this a quintessentially Taylor moment that she stops and tries to converse with the evil monstrous clone? Like, yeah. I don't even think I doubt any other character in this story would actually do that.
Yeah, I mean, we juxtapose her with Rachel rather specifically, who doesn't seem to feel bad at all. At all.
Right. Yeah, they're less than people, and Rachel already barely cares about people in general.
Yeah.
So there's just this. So you were talking earlier about juxtapositions and kind of irony cuts. So I just wanted to read this section here. This is the clone talking. Kill others. Kill Dad and Mom and Sammy and the cats. Kill teachers and classmates and burn my house and burn the school. Fuckers, all of them, looking down on me. And then Taylor thinks, his words struck a chord. And it was the closest experience I'd ever had to the sort of flashback that happened in movies. I could remember being in the school bathroom, dripping with juice, being so frustrated, so angry, so hurt that I just wanted to lash out. And I'm like, oh my God. Because it's like the fact that she can empathize with that level of insane rage is so telling and sad and alarming. Yeah. And so many things.
Yeah, we move past just humanizing the clones to Taylor literally jumping in their shoes and saying, oh yeah, kill everyone? That reminds me of that time that I wanted to kill everyone.
Yeah.
And I this actually got me thinking, and I think it poses an interesting question. Let's put Taylor as she is now back in that bathroom stall. Let's have Emma pour that juice on Skitter. And what does she do now? Because then she wanted to lash out, but she stopped herself. She calmed herself down. What would happen now, Matt? I wonder.
Yeah, I'm thinking something along the lines of what her Brockton Bay poster said.
Yeah, I think you're
about shocking violence.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah. So she and Rachel finish off the clones, and Skitter feels bad about the whole ordeal, and she's really physically exhausted from her broken rib and having to fight that way. They meet back up with the others and they head towards some other capes. And it's Strapping Lad, Intrepid, and Young Buck, the Texas Wards team. Yay!
So, Matt, we both lived in Texas for a very long time. I still live there. So, how do you feel about these capes? I think that some of them are very stereotypically Texas, but in the same time, I could definitely see a Texas resident naming themselves Young Buck. Like, that would absolutely happen.
Yeah, I mean, as a Texan, I can verify that all stereotypes are true, essentially, in their own way.
We don't ride around on horses, guys. We have cars in Texas.
I mean, some people do, yes. I mean, that's the thing is even the Texans who live in Houston their whole lives and have seen a horse 5 times love the idea of being Texan.
Yeah, that's true.
And love to like get cowboy boots and have the attire of being a Texan. So I can totally see, even if these are like cosmopolitan capes, I can totally see them going all in on the Texas mythology. I personally love that they have stereotypically Texas names.
Yeah,
that's just so Texas. That's just exactly how that would be.
I don't dislike it. I just think it made me laugh very much. It's I don't know, like, I don't know if Wild Bo's ever been to Texas or not. And it's so funny that this is a stereotype that just is true. It's just so true. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that if there were real superheroes, one would call himself Young Buck. Like, there's no doubt. Of course they would. Yeah.
And the Intrepid's not too bad. I mean, that's just a fairly good name.
Strapping Lad.
Yeah. So these capes, the Texas capes, are harassing Noelle with Tinker-made guns and with Strapping Lad's apparent breaker power, where he can just sort of like turn himself into a bullet. Chronicler is also there, and he seems to be able to sort of duplicate things in a time-shifted way, basically doubles up attacks and the effect of the attacks.
Yeah, I'd like to point out again that we are over halfway through this huge book now, and yet we're still regularly being introduced to new cool superpowers that not only have we never seen in this story before, but I've never really seen in comic books before. And it's really cool that even here in the back half of the story, Wild Bo continues to come up with new, cool, interesting twists on powers.
Yeah, like you said, Chronicler. That's a really interesting. Like, you can see how that would have a lot of utility. You can, like, your imagination immediately starts going like, how could you use that to your advantage in a variety of situations?
Yep.
Maybe even defensively, and it's just this, very tertiary character. I don't even think he gets a line.
Yeah.
So at this point, Tecton weighs in, repeatedly shattering in the ground around Noelle's feet and keeping her in place relatively well. And Skitter realizes he's actually making the area into an antlion pit around her. And she tries to slip her clones out via the 2D surface utilizing Vista. And Skitter catches onto this and has Tecton do a wide, shallow attack over every nearby surface, which drives the clones into the open and damages at least one of them. But they're still pretty effective. The Uber injures several of the flying heroes with thrown knives, including poor Strapping Buck, and the circus sets one of them on fire.
Yeah, that was our one opportunity to represent in this book, and Texas failed.
Yeah,
Texas failed.
We're ashamed.
Wait, did you call him Strapping Buck?
Strapping, I did.
Did you combine?
I did call him. I did call him Strapping Buck. One of those guys.
I like Strapping Buck even more, actually.
Yeah, makes sense. So Noelle then vomits a huge stream of clones and vomit, and she uses the clones for traction to climb out of the pit. Grace is knocked down and glued to the ground.
So I'm glad we took the opportunity to humanize these creatures that Noelle is now quite literally using as snow chains for traction to get out of an antlion pit. Thanks Wildbow, for spending the time to show us how these poor people are humans.
Yeah.
It just makes it even worse.
Yeah, at least we're spared the moment of them like being ground into paste under her feet.
Yeah, that's true.
So
the cries of pain.
Yeah, right. Why, mother? So she shoots the Texans out of the sky with sprays of vomit, and Eidolon finally steps in using a kind of moisture manipulation power, mass desiccation, Tecton shouts that he's killing Grace too, and Gru points out that Eidolon might not care at this point. It doesn't seem like Eidolon is experiencing that level of danger that he thinks he needs.
Oh yeah, and there's that monstrous Eidolon that Jessica Yamada so rightly pegged a few chapters ago, seemingly unaware or unconcerned about the consequences of his actions. Is he putting a member of his own team at risk for, I mean, will we say the greater good, Matt?
I don't know.
Is that a theme? Sure is that a theme we've hit a few times?
I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure Eidolon would say that. Yeah, and I'd just like to remark here how deftly the tension is being manipulated in this whole section. Because Eidolon is on the scene, and he's obviously really powerful. And in this moment, he himself doesn't feel like he's in any personal danger from Noelle. Yet this doesn't at all deflate the worry that we feel for our main characters. And I think that's because it's very strongly shown to us in moments like this that Eidolon isn't strong enough to protect them, and also kind of doesn't care to.
Yeah. And I completely agree. And I think it goes kind of back to what I was talking about earlier, that this battle is massive. And when you have a scope this big, the risk is that you kind of lose the stakes amongst the action, that you drop the tension, and once you lose the stakes, the tension goes away and it kind of spoils it, and then it's just mindless action. And this happens so often in superhero movies. You and I talk about it all the time. As we pull out, we lose those little human beats that keep us invested. I love Marvel, but the Avengers movies do this a lot, and it kills the third act of these movies. But here, even as our scope and our stakes have zoomed to the city-wide conflict where two superpowered gods are fighting each other, we keep things level. We keep things human. We're with Taylor on the ground, still fighting for her life, and we feel that, and we never lose that threat of danger, and then we never lose the tension, and it is so effective.
Yep. I agree. I like how this is done quite a lot. So then the cavalry arrive. Ballistic comes in, blowing holes in Noelle as he approaches, and Trickster and Scrub and the rest of the combat travelers too. Trickster swaps Grace out of the danger zone and himself in, and he's actually fairly close, hanging out in the vomit slurry.
Yeah, it's hard not to read this as like a victory moment, isn't it? Because we know the travelers, we like the travelers, we've been with them for so long, and you're almost like, yes, they're here and they're fighting her. The tide's gonna turn. Let's do this. And then of course it worms itself. Worm happens.
Yeah. So for a while, Trickster is teleporting Eidolon away and keeping him away so that the travelers can talk to her. And Sundancer says that she's going to use her son to kill Noelle. And that way, at least, Noelle can be a good memory instead of a memory of destruction. But Noelle is kind of past the point of accepting that anymore.
But since we know Sundancer so Noelle, we know how hard it must be for her to make that choice, to get to that point where she feels like she has to do that. And
yeah,
and it shows again just how important that arc 17 was, Matt, that time in all these characters' heads, these beats hit you harder than they would if you didn't know this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and she really seems to mean it here, that she's actually going to go through with it.
Yeah.
I like this line from Noelle where somebody's telling her, like, you're killing people, and Noelle's basically saying those people don't matter. It's not our world. It's as screwed up as the things I make. They're just dark, twisted copies of people in this dark, twisted, fucked up world, which is a nice reminder that to the travelers, Earthbet is already the evil mirror world.
Yeah. Perspective is interesting, and it changes how you rationalize things. But it's interesting that, like, that's a great comparison. But since we've been humanizing these clones, it's easy to counter her logic, being like, yeah, just like those clones you're making, though, the people of this world are still people, and even if you don't think they're real people, they still are people. Noelle, you're not making any sense anymore.
Right? They still suffer. That's kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's just justifying herself at this point. Yeah. She's full of shit.
Yeah.
So she tells Trickster that if he gives her what she wants, she'll let them kill her. And he sighs and agrees with that, predictably. So with that, he swaps himself for Gru, and she gets Gru. And then shortly after, he puts Skitter herself right next to Noelle, and she's caught as well and pulled in through the shifting flesh, and she senses Regent appear near as well. And he says something as he too is captured.
Yeah, it was at this point that I realized why everyone hates Krause so much because of this bullshit. But this is kind of, I think I predicted this last week that this is what was going to happen, that Krause in the final moment in the decisive moment, rather, is going to align himself with Noelle and betray everyone else. That here, even in this moment, he can't take her off the pedestal. And the consequences of that are, I guess we're going to find out next week. But yeah, I mean, this is it. This is his tragic choice, I guess, that, you know, on top of everything he's done before this, all the mistakes he made, he had a chance to make it right. And he chose not to. Yep.
It is a tragedy.
And then we're done with Skitter for the rest of the arc. We still have 2 more chapters, but we're going to leave her. And I think this is like, we've left Skitter in a lot of pretty bad situations before. But this seems like one, like, I don't know if Taylor's toolbox has escaped from a giant mutating girl tummy in it. So this is like, I mean, it's a really great cliffhanger. I mean, because like there's been so many situations she's been in where I'm like, how the hell is she going to get out of this? But this is probably the most how the hell is she going to get out of this out of all of them.
Yeah, I feel you there. But we'll see. Or maybe we won't, Scott. Maybe she won't get out of this.
Wow, you're so mysterious.
I have to be, Scott. It's my job.
I understand.
All right. So we cut from here to a very interesting interlude, 18 dot whatever, Faultline.
18 dot Faultline.
Yeah, 18 dot Faultline. It's not, although interestingly, this interlude shifts POV because it starts out with Dr. Jeremy Foster, who is woken by a gunshot. He calls the security, and the person who answers isn't the person who should answer. And he rushes to his door, and outside his bedroom door are a pair of people. And he barely manages to slam the door and get into his panic room before they get to him.
I wonder if Wildbow is ever just going to write straight up horror fiction because he has a real knack for it. He really does. And like, it's very obvious that he's established this as being in this guy's point of view for a reason, to make this more tense and to make it more scary. And it does that because that's the only reason to start in this guy's point of view, because you could very easily just start from Faultline's POV as they approach the door to fuck with this guy. But he doesn't do that. And it's just a really great start. It's kind of like remnant to me of like the cold open of a horror movie where a guy dies before the credits roll.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. That's definitely some tropes at play there. I know Wellbow said that he loves horror. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did write some. I mean, but part of me wants to say like part of Worm probably, but parts of Worm probably do qualify as horror. But I think to take your point, like it's the overarching genre is superhero, with some playing in the boundaries. But it would be really interesting to see Wildbow write just like a horror story. Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
So he watches on the monitor as the thieves enter his house, ignoring all the valuables and heading straight to his bedroom. Once there, we see Labyrinth's power transform the room into an overgrown temple. Soon the door to his panic room is removed, and he opens fire with his pistol, but nobody is there to shoot at.
And this is when Scott got excited, because we haven't seen Faultline's crew in forever. And Gregor the Snail is my boy. He's my favorite slug person I've ever known.
Me too.
Also, I like Labyrinth a lot too. I like her a lot.
So here's where we switch POV to Faultline, and we stay with her for the rest of the interlude. So the crew are flanking the door. Faultline wants answers from the doctor. He has been spending too much money, and she knows he must be getting it from somewhere. And they suspect it's Cauldron.
Yeah, I think you could just rename this entire interlude Cauldron is the worst, and I don't think you'd be very far off.
Yeah, I mean, and like you pointed out a while ago, there's a lot of Cauldron kind of foreshadowing and and implication going on in this whole arc.
Yeah.
So since he's being uncooperative, she, quote, checks with the person paying for the mission to see if he's willing to torture the doctor, which means that she looks at Gregor, surprisingly, and he just shakes his head.
Yeah, and this is where I couldn't remember if Gregor was not really part of the crew or not, and he's just hired them, so he's been hanging out with them, or is he part of the crew? He's just also hiring them to do the thing he wants.
Yeah, I think like my sort of twisted explanation for this is just like part of their MO as a group is that they're this group who has an unusual number of K-63s and they have an unusual interest in figuring out the Cauldron mystery. But because they're mercenaries and because Faultline is who she is, they got to get paid. So so here Gregor is paying out of his own pocket to send the team on a mission that is pursuant to several of the team members' goals, actually. It's
very interesting that we have that juxtaposed with the fact that they seem like such a tight-knit family, which is a beat we hit over and over again in this, which goes to show like even a family of mercenaries are still mercenaries.
Yeah, right. And I mean, like, it seems really important to Faultline, that she like be able to take herself seriously in this role as a mercenary. So I can totally see her doing this thing where she's like making Gregor pay them for it, and then everyone just rolling their eyes and doing it anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so she threatens to blab about what they already know, and he tells her that he did some low-end espionage for the UK and the CIU, I think, and they get a name for one of his contacts, a Christoph, and it's a useful clue because Christoph seems to want to know the aftermath of a particular Simurgh attack, Madison.
Oh, you mean that one where all the Case-53s escaped because the Simurgh opened a portal to the Cauldron's pocket dimension thing? That one?
Yeah.
That place?
I believe so.
Okay.
So back at the hotel room, we get a slice of life in Faultline's crew. The varying personalities, Spitfire and Neuter, sort of good-naturedly pushing back against Faultline's orders. Everybody pitching in to take care of Noelle. Faultline brushes Noelle's Elle. I don't know how that happened. Take care of Elle. Faultline, yeah, I guess so. Faultline brushes Elle's hair and chides her not to change the room into a setting that involves water, just to avoid doing water damage and I guess losing their deposit. Not that that's usually a problem, since the labyrinth power usually puts things mostly back the way they were, apparently.
Yeah, and like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're intentionally seemingly trying to reinforce this unit cohesion, this idea of family, this idea of like almost domestic life that these mercenaries have with each other. They like each other. They enjoy each other's company. And this will come into play when they're brutally attacked in a few pages.
Yeah. Yeah, so Gregor and Shamrock enter, holding hands.
Gregor, my boy! I was so happy with this. Hey,
yeah, me too.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
Looks like Shamrock isn't the only one getting lucky. Matt, I wrote that joke 7 days ago. Wait, no, 5 days ago. I wrote that joke on Thursday when I read this, and I could have tweeted it, but I didn't. I saved it for right now, and all you out there,
it was worth it.
You better say you loved it.
That's some discipline. All right, let me pull myself together.
I'm just too funny. I can't even. It's such a burden.
I know. I'm sorry. So the team gets ready for another job. We get a description of Faultline's gear as she puts it on, and it's purely functional. She wears a bulletproof vest and a fake ponytail that's purely there to be grabbed as a trap. Her body is covered in belts full of tools and weapons and guns. She kind of looks like the Punisher at this point in my head. But unlike the Punisher, though, she covers all of this attire with a flowing dress and a welder's mask, which at this point for me, as soon as I had this thought, I had to go on a tangent and read about the Punisher for a while and think about how that character is also sort of a bit of a deconstruction of the superhero idea, the same way Worm is, but in a different direction.
I support this tangent. Well done.
Yeah. But gonna truncate that right there and get back to the chapter. The crew leave the hotel and cross the no man's land to the wall that now encircles Madison. Faultline uses her power to make an opening in the wall, a tunnel going all the way through. Labyrinth changes the tunnel into something more accommodating.
Yeah, and again, this is this little beat of them working together, them being in sync with each other, and their abilities teaming up. They're a team. They're a family. We keep hitting this.
Yeah. They enter the city, and Shamrock is not enjoying the claustrophobic tunnel at all.
Yeah, and that's, again, another seemingly insignificant character beat. It might pay off in the future. Might not. It might have to do with her trigger event. Might not. But it serves in this moment to kind of do a little characterization. A little character we don't know a lot about. We get a little bit of characterization from her, and it helps that she's concerned about this, and the rest of the team knows that, and they kind of help her through it. And again, Wildbow bringing character moments in places that you wouldn't always think about it.
Yeah, particularly to your point where she's being claustrophobic, and the other teammates are like, okay, we'll try to accommodate you better on the way back.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit hard on Taylor here, but I feel like she would kind of be like, in her head at least, be like, you're being an inadequate tool right now by experiencing this claustrophobia, which is highly inconvenient for our mission. Can you just get your shit together, Shamrock?
I think you're probably right. I think we're probably going to get some pushback on that, but I think you're right.
Because Taylor is often like empathetic, but often like during a mission, she's not. So
yeah, she's I think if someone's concerns are preventing the plan from being executed in the proper way, that is when her empathy stops.
Yeah. So inside Madison, the city has withered. Windows are broken, buildings are collapsed, plant life has taken root everywhere. It's only been a year and a half, but nature is already reclaiming the place. Yet again, speaking of juxtapositions, we have this moment inside Faultline's head where she's thinking. She couldn't help but think about what Coyle had said about the world ending in 2 years. However it happened, if it happened, how long would it be before nature had destroyed every trace of humanity after mankind was gone? Pretty, Labyrinth said as she emerged from the tunnel, her head craned as she looked around.
Yeah, Wildbow loves those rhythmic irony cuts, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He really does. And they're very effective. I enjoy them a lot. Some of my favorite TV shows use them almost religiously. And it's either funny or effective or shining lights on things that need to be shined on. And it works here. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they move on, looking for any survivors in the city. Dr. Foster had been asked to keep tabs on people being released from the quarantine. So Faultline assumes that's the information that Cauldron is after. These would be the people getting the bird tattoo, though apparently that program has been abandoned. Because it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Okay. So bone to pick with some people out there. Well, first of all, before we get into that, I can't believe it took me to this moment to link the swan tattoo that we saw on Manton's hand to the Seamerg. I don't know why I didn't make that connection. I think it's pretty obvious when you think about it, but I guess I'm not as good as some of you think I am. But more importantly, everyone got on my case for saying that the quarantine measures were ineffective and horrible and inhumane and mean. And then the text basically agrees by saying that specifically because it's abandoned almost immediately. And
well, the tattoo aspect is abandoned, right? I don't know if they abandoned other aspects.
Oh, well, maybe I read that wrong then.
Well, but like the tattoos are particularly inhumane aspect, I think.
Because it marks you permanently. Yeah. And before people are going to get on me and say, it was abandoned because it's the civilians' fault. They refused to cooperate. My response to that is, that's what happens when you design a cruel system that punishes innocent people. The people tend to push back on it.
Yeah.
I still think it's a terrible idea. I don't like it. Everyone had really great points. Their logic was sound. My response is, but that's awful.
Yeah, no, I get it. And like, I had my own kind of pushback to it. Although if you were to put me in a corner and say like, okay, Matt, you come up with a better idea, I would have a hard time and probably invented an idea that resulted in the Seamer destroying the world.
Well, Matt, the advantage of being a critic is you don't have to come up with the ideas. You just have to tell other people that they're bad.
Yeah, I don't have to have solutions. I just have to point out problems. Exactly.
There you
go. Yeah. Speaking of the tattoo, I wanted to at least mention, if you didn't know this, you may have known this. People in real life have actually gotten tattoos inspired by the Seamer, the swan, the bird, cool. the white bird type tattoo.
That's cool.
Yeah, I agree that's really awesome. And if I ever saw that in real life, I would be your friend.
Did you run up and hug them?
I mean, that's the funny thing about getting that specific tattoo is, like, in order to play along with the joke, I'd probably act like I was terrified of them and run away. At least at first,
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, I guess, like, so assuming that Faultline is right in her interpretation of things, Cauldron wanted this guy to keep track of people who were being put through the quarantine procedure. What do you think are the odds that Cauldron was specifically looking into the travelers and they slipped through the net?
I mean, I guess that's kind of hard for me to believe, because I don't know how they would know that they got there. I mean, it makes sense that they specifically know about all their Case 53s that escaped, because they have all these guys that escaped, and they know they escaped. They had at least an inventory of monsters, but that kind of thing would imply that they have some sort of knowledge that this happened. And I guess it's possible in a world of superheroes that they have people on their team that just know these kind of things. So I guess that's possible. I don't know if there's enough textual evidence right now to conclude on that definitively.
Yeah, that's just where my mind went. But I agree with you that it's like, it's a stretch to prove it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's certainly as nefarious and... Why do I always say that word wrong? Jesus. I know how it's pronounced, and then I say it, and it comes out of my mouth wrong. Anyway.
I do it too, sometimes.
Anyway, they're as terrible as they are. I would not be surprised that they have a way of knowing, and they've been looking for these kids for a while. That's not out of the realm of believability.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to see what you were thinking at this point. Yeah, so... and just a bit of like flavor here as they're walking through. Faultline noted a message scrawled onto a wall: 3 horn babies seen here, May 20, killed 2, 1 lived. And then later someone relates another message to her. I couldn't read it all, very broken English, but it said something about a devourer.
Yeah, so things in Madison, Wisconsin are not going well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's perfect, because I don't need to know anything else about what thorn babies are. That's perfect. That's a perfect name. I already am imagining something terrible. Yeah.
And the devourer. There's no devourer. Positive context of the word devourer.
Yeah. So they move deeper into the city, not finding any people. And Faultline thanks Elle for going through all of this. All the moving around is making it difficult for her to settle into one place and reach a point of lucidity. Yeah,
again and again, this beat. Genuine kindness between teammates, camaraderie, family. Yeah. We're hitting this over and over again, and it's important, it's necessary, and it's doing something.
Yeah, totally. At this point, Faultline sees a flare launched by Neuter. She races to him and finds civilians with improvised primitive weapons. Faultline offers to help them leave quarantine, which is a terrible idea, if they know where the crew can talk to some monsters. One of the women with them turns out to be one, our friend Matryoshka. I wonder what exactly we're supposed to feel about this, though, since I suspect that she's absorbed a few people in order to look normal.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to feel pretty conflicted. We left her while she was basically eating people back in that diner or that burger stand or whatever it was. But also, like, I think the text kind of specifically painted a way to pity them, so I think you're conflicted about it. I don't know if we trust her. She could be bad news, but also you feel bad for her.
Yeah,
because of fucking Cauldron.
Yeah, right. And she's a victim, and I am reminded that, like, the other two, or maybe even just one of the other monsters she was with, were pressuring her to devour the other people.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know if that absolves her or whatever, but like she was in a bad situation. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't like, oh yeah, Faultline, just forgive her.
No, totally. Yeah, I think I was the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So Shamrock tells us a bit about what it was like in the Cauldron prison, because if you recall, she was there and she escaped. So they gave her small comforts if she cooperated, and nothing or punishment if she didn't, trying to coax her to use her powers. Matryoshka says that she thinks that they used her to punish others who had failed their tests. She admits that she's a predator and says that Faultline's crew don't want her near them. And Faultline blows this off, though I don't know if we're supposed to feel that this is smart.
Yeah. I like this because we established that tension, and then she's almost like immediately nice. Matryoshka is. So like admitting that I'm a hunter, I'm not necessarily a good person, you don't want me, and then take her in anyway. So we kind of dispel that tension. And then we just see another example of Cauldron being a bunch of cruel assholes, because Shamrock's story is terrible. Like the coin flipping, and then I think she said by the end of it, she had to get 12 dice to hit 6 before she could eat, or something. Like it's just terrible. And we've been talking about it all episode, that Cauldron is bad beats again and again and again. And I think this is interesting because this story is kind of talking about bad things, evil things, and how sometimes we do bad things for good reasons. So which makes me think that Cauldron is not just going to be this nebulous evil organization with just pure evil goals. It's just not the kind of story this is. So there's probably going to be a reason that Cauldron eventually gives us for why they're doing the things they do, and it's necessary evil. And I think Alexandria already kind of hints that. But it's interesting that we didn't show the organization as its front first and then show the terrible things behind it. We did it the opposite way. We're like hitting all the terrible beats, and then later we're going to be told why they're doing those things. And I wonder if that's a way to like confront Taylor with that kind of reasoning. And I think that's probably going to be how this plays out in the future, and I'm interested to see it.
Yeah, that is really interesting. That's interesting because that's like a kind of speculation that doesn't. It's not really like a plot speculation. It's more of like a structure. Evolution of storytelling dynamics speculation. I think that's really, really interesting.
Those are my favorite kind.
Yeah. I mean,
don't know why I did an accent on that. That was weird.
It was necessary. So the crew returned to the hotel with Matryoshka, who gorges and watches TV and tells them about her world, which we don't get to hear anything about. Faultline heads to the front desk to take a call from Brockton Bay, assuming it's Coyle. On her way to the front desk, she walks past a young dark-haired lady in a suit and fedora who tips her hat as she steps into the elevator. Faultline has a bad feeling about her, and she sends Shamrock back upstairs to tell the team to keep an eye out. Yeah.
So everyone got on me last time for pronouncing Contessa's name wrong the first time. This time, I'm saying it wrong on purpose.
So Faultline expects the call to be from Coyle, but it's her best friend Tattletale instead. She wants to borrow Labyrinth for some non-combat functionality. And just this moment of, I think, Tattletale said, and she managed to sound condescending, that I understand her power better than you do. Faultline considered hanging up. I mean, it's really funny to me because Faultline has been like such a nice person to everyone in this whole interlude, and she just hates Tattletale.
Yeah, you almost forget that she never really liked her, right? That this was always like there was always animosity between the two, and this kind of reminds you of it. And I guess so the indication here is that Tattletale wants to use Labyrinth to get the travelers home, I guess, which is kind of way different from what we understand of Labyrinth's power at all. But, Tattletale knows things and is kind of becoming pretty smug about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she's getting pretty bad.
Yeah, and I think if we're trying to slot this timeline-wise, I'm guessing this is the part that is taking place like right after Tattletale left the group with Imp, and to use her computer. And this is part of her plan around how she's going to combat Noelle.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So Tattletale ends up paying her a total of $6.8 million to return to Brockton Bay for this job, and she wires it to her on the spot. Faultline then heads upstairs to check on the funds and hears screaming.
And the cool thing about this moment to me is that we saw Contessa, right? So we know that she's there, and you're fairly sure it's her. But in the back of your mind, you also remember Matryoshka. And I think it's cool that they could both be plausible. Either could be plausible. Like you're still kind of unsure what's happening.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I forgot about that because I remembered this scene, obviously. But yeah, that's very interesting because you're almost like, well, maybe the woman in the fedora was a red herring. Yeah. Cool. So there's blood on the door. Her team has been destroyed, in her words. Gregor is on his back, scalded. Neuter's bones are broken in multiple places. Matryoshka's ribbons are pinned to the walls with knives. Labyrinth is screaming in a fugue. One of her hands is impaled to the armrest of the couch with a knife. Shamrock is using one of her remaining working hand to give a tracheotomy to Spitfire, who's suffocating on a hatful of Gregor's slime. So Contessa took her team apart in 20 seconds and didn't even receive a scratch in return. And she left a note under Elle's hand. Final warning, C.
Yeah, I guess that's why the doctor or whatever always felt really confident whenever Contessa was around her, because holy shit. And this is like, we've been setting up this whole chapter, how kind they were to each other, how well they worked together, how much of a family they were. And it gets us in this mindset of Faultline genuinely cares about these people. So when we hit this moment of them being devastated, we feel it. And especially Elle, poor screaming Elle, we feel this so much. And you leave this chapter saying, I can't imagine someone that didn't leave this chapter hating Coil. Like, I certainly do. And I feel like we're supposed to at this point.
Yeah.
Did I say Coil? I meant Cauldron.
Yeah. I mean, we already hate Coil.
Yeah.
It's fine. We all get 5 using the wrong name instances per episode.
Oh God. I hope people aren't tracking that.
People are going to want me to ask you to speculate on Contessa's power at this point, now that we've seen her do something.
They're
going to do it. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask now.
I have no idea.
All right. That's fine.
Everything. Her power is everything.
Okay. Sounds good. Got that out of the way. 18 dot something. The Noelle interlude, which I think we've been waiting for subconsciously.
Yep.
So Noelle is leading her team to video game glory back in the day. She manages the complex situation intuitively, ignoring Cody's tantrum. It's a nail-biter, but the travelers come out on top. They're jubilant, and Noelle is happy enough that she's able to hug Kraus without feeling self-conscious about it.
Yeah, this is such a great opening chapter. We've never seen Noelle like this, not really. Like she's in the zone, she's happy, she's doing what she loves, and she's good at it. And she's commanding her troops, much like Taylor would, mind you. I like this Noelle, and I think triggering that empathetic reaction for her is so important to everything that follows this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this chapter emphasizes the degree to which she's a victim, and she's just been absolutely run ragged with what she's been through.
Yeah.
So she comes back to herself, and we realize that was a flashback. Her body, her giant monstrous body, is running too hot. It's feverish. It's unbearable. She talks to herself, to her passenger. She says, "I know why you showed me that."
This is, I think, the first time we're getting a real confirmation of the self-awareness and kind of consciousness of the passengers, I think. This is kind of huge in our understanding of what the passengers are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Trickster is with her. We're basically picking up where we just left off. He's discombobulating the heroes with his power. He's moving with confidence and assuredness and pride.
But we know Kraus. Mm-hmm. We know this is false confidence. We know it's false assuredness. Even in this moment, he can't take that mask off, even as he betrays everyone and breaks every promise he made to all these people. he still has to hold himself as this prideful, confident person. It's all for Noelle. It's all for Noelle.
Yeah,
Oh, Kraus.
Yeah, it's true. You're forced to go into his head for a moment here and see that he feels forced into this mainly through guilt and obligation.
Yep.
So as she draws Regent into herself, Regent shouts for Rachel to get away. Noelle tries to spray some bodies out for Trickster to use to swap Rachel toward them, but Tecton covers Rachel's retreat with dust. And then I like this, that we get a description from Noelle's point of view of like what it is she's doing exactly. And it says, Noelle tagged several of the bodies in her internal stomachs, felt flesh constrict tight against them, felt the pre-prepared nuggets of flesh in her gullet forming into close replicas in an instant. Timing was crucial. If she spat them out too soon, they'd be malformed, missing limbs or features. Too late, and there was extra material.
Yeah, this is really gross, and the detail is great. And I think it just shows how like Wildbow wants to create this world in as much detail as possible. It's not enough to just say she made the clones. He needs to add that air of authenticity to it, to what is happening and how it's working. And it's kind of crazy that he's sticking with this as we go to this more outlandish kind of plot where we're going like more sci-fi, more weird and crazy, and we're still sticking to basing ourselves in some sort of explainable thing.
Yeah, right. Like it's not just like suddenly they appear magically. It's like she's talking about stomachs and gullets and muscles, and you know, she can clearly feel exactly what she's doing.
There's an actual mechanism in there doing it. It's not just touch person, poof.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I agree. That's great. So she spits out the real Uber accidentally, but doesn't bother to reclaim him because he's useless.
You suck, Uber.
And then we get the best moment ever. Hey, Regent said, Monster Girl. Noelle snarled as she glanced down at the boy who was stuck inside one of her legs. Only his face was left to be consumed. Her voice was hoarse with emotion as she asked, What? When you make my clone, do you think you could give him a goatee? Noelle didn't dignify the question with a response. She flexed and drew Regent completely within her body.
This shit, Matt. This shit right here. Forget everything else we've talked about for 19 episodes. This is why this book is so great.
Yeah.
We've been saying it again and again, especially this week, but these tiny, almost insignificant character beat moments are everything. They're everything. And like, this is a tense, depressing, horrible interlude in which we're seeing this poor girl with an eating disorder suffer and lose a battle with this force that's taking her over from the inside. And yet we can still have moments of fun. We can still laugh. We can still drop tension for a little bit to have a chuckle to ourselves as we read. And that's so important. And it's done so well. And I lost it when I read this. I loved it. Yeah.
For some reason, it makes it even funnier that she's just like furious and not having it at all.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of my favorite, jokes. And I just, the comic relief element of Regent's character is absolutely indispensable.
Yeah, I agree.
So her body is rewarding her for moving. It's rewarding her for using her body for aggression. It makes her feel good. It gives her endorphins and happy memories. And soon Noelle thinks she'll be the one trying to manipulate her body into doing what she wants instead of the other way around.
Oh, almost as if the passenger inside her is influencing her to make her act more aggressive and to fight. Did we just confirm my speculation, Matt? Did we just do it?
I mean, you can probably say it's provisionally, unless it's like contradicted later, because that's
fine.
Seems. I mean.
I'll put a little half smiley face on it.
No, I think you should just. Confirm it. We can always unconfirm it later if it turns out to be wrong.
I guess that's true. All right, let's move on.
Okay, Tecton tries to hold her at bay, and she mobs him with clones. She's hesitating more when spitting clones because she doesn't want to risk losing an undersider. And apparently there's a higher risk of losing an original if she's made a lot of clones first.
Yeah, and again, we're putting artificial but realistic sounding limitations on powers, because it's not just enough to invent a new thing, and it's not just enough to define the parameters, but we have to put a limitation on it. It makes it feel more real. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too, and it's a limitation that Skidder doesn't actually know. The heroes don't actually know this limitation. So, yeah. As she fights Grace, she tries to consider what clones to use to fight her off. She thinks about the smell aspect of her power, the means by which she can sense and come to understand the powers of capes. Skidder's, Gru's, and Eidolon smells, are relatively unique. They're more intense.
All right. Let's have some fun with this, because I think we can look at what the unique things do we know about each of these people and attempt to draw a connection to them. We know that Gru has had his second trigger event. We know that Eidolon is the most powerful non-Scion cape in the world and is a cauldron cape. We know that the three of them are powerful, but we also know that Vista's very powerful too, and interestingly enough was not included in this list. So it doesn't appear to just be power level that she's talking about here. So I do have a speculation here, but you're going to have to wait till the end.
Okay, excited. She lets a Gru spill forth. The real Gru comes out as well, but she slurps him back up. And it looks like Gru will make for useful clones because he's an orderly and disciplined person, and his clones will therefore be lawful evil.
Yeah, and it's that protective nature of him that seems to pass on to his clone too, because he immediately starts protecting Noelle.
Yeah, right. So this Gru's darkness is sticky. Tecton manages to impede his use of his sticky darkness blobs, and he keeps both of them busy. Trickster and Noelle, Trickster has taken out the rest of the flying capes except for one, and Eidolon is holding back somewhere nearby. Trickster teleports into a group of clones, and they go after him. They don't listen when Noelle tries to call them off, and she's forced to kind of stampede at them and scare them back. She's tempted to swallow him, Trickster that is, but she restrains herself. And she thinks, to herself, two of them against the world. That's how she sees it.
Just like Krauss always wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that echoes, I don't think he says that specifically, but I think that echoes a feeling he had in Arc 17.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not sure. Yeah, it does sound really familiar. So now she gets another memory, and we see her attempted breakup from the other side. And I find that we had such a strong sense of these characters from the first time around that we don't even really need this scene. Although I do enjoy many of the specific touches that we do get.
Yeah, I agree. I still really like it, though. I think it does reinforce how little Krauss actually cared about what her problems were, because he knew she had a problem, and it doesn't take too much to see that the reason for their breakup seems to stem from it. He seems even conscious of that, but he can't see the problem itself, and he can't see that by putting her on this pedestal, he's enabling that disorder. And we could have kind of gotten that from the scene from his point of view, but I like it. I like it from her mind as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't mean to imply that I didn't want it in the story. It's more that I felt like I already understood her character so well, that it was not I don't know what I was trying to say there.
I got you though, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So it finally becomes clear that she has an eating disorder, like you said. Specifically, she's already relapsed once due to their relationship. So she loves him and she hates him, basically, is kind of the emotional undertone of all this.
Yeah. I'm sad that I was right about this. I think it was very obvious when you look at all the clues in Arc 17, but it's very awful. And there's the one part I like in particular when she says that she can't break it off, not when he's being this good about it, not when it's making the both of us this miserable. Mm-hmm. And this really hit me, Matt, because it's such a human response to a breakup. I know this because I did the exact same thing. I broke up with someone years and years ago and then saw how miserable it was making the two of us. And then I decided to get back together with that person. And it was a horrible mistake. It was not a good move. It wasn't like a ending with me rampaging across the city, eating people and barfing up evil clones horrible. But I almost moved to Kansas. So basically the same.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've given the tip before that if someone tries to break up with you, don't convince them not to, which is the inverse of that
Yeah.
advice, actually.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you could argue that Noelle maybe should have been stronger here. You can make that argument. But Krauss should have listened to what she was saying. Not just the words, but the intent behind them. The relationship was messing her up, and she tried to get out of it, and he would not let her. And that, I think, is the most important part of that beat, that he would not let her. They mention the duality here very specifically, that she loves him and she hates him, and it matches up perfectly with the two parts of Noelle that are existing inside her right now that are battling for control. I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, I didn't catch that. Yeah, that's interesting. So she comes back to herself from this terrible flashback, and she's fighting Eidolon. She has to slurp up Skitter again, who she spit out while she was out of it.
That's our protagonist.
Yeah.
just like thrown up and spit and slurped up again.
Yeah. And she thinks to herself, or she thinks to her passenger rather, why did you show me that? Why was that so important? There was no reply. Never a reply. I just like that. Just like that.
Yeah.
That confirmation that it's not like the passenger talks back to her. It's this very abstract relationship, if you can even call it that.
Yeah. Right.
So her regent knocks Eidolon out of the sky. Tecton and Grace are still being complete ballers, tripping up Noelle's footing and knocking her around. They're like a really impressive tag team. Like, they've survived and been effective for this long.
Yeah, they've kind of hovered in the background a little bit, not getting too much attention. But you're right, they're really cool, and I kind of hope we haven't seen the last of them.
Yeah. Eidolon starts using a new power at this point. He releases blue sparks, which grow into large crackling spheres of electrical charge that home in on targets. They spread evenly across the area, removing the advantage of Trickster's mobility. And then we have this. I'm just going to read this whole thing. It's Noelle. It wasn't you, she thought. I keep saying it was your fault. It wasn't. She was already moving toward him as the thought came to her. I blamed you for giving me the elixir, the potion, whatever you call it. But it was me. I heard you guys talking about how the people who drank the stuff were supposed to get tested for psychiatric issues. I didn't tell you the Seamerg showed me visions of my worst days, my relapses, my lowest points. That she drove me back into a state where I was reluctant to take the full dose, eager for a compromise.
And there it is. There's the Seamerg's full plan revealed. Mm-hmm. Krauss's job was just to get to the point where he would pressure her into taking the vial. And her job was to be just insecure enough to only take half of it. This is the end game. We're here now. And it's shows how powerful this creature is, how scary. Yeah.
And in a sense, it's like the other shoe dropping from a dramatic moment that was set up in the Traveler's Arc.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really cool that that's happening here at the end of this arc. So she's almost, I don't know if she's fully suicidal here, but she's trying to protect Trickster. She uses her body to take the hits from the orbs to shield Trickster from them. She willingly takes hit after hit, and her flesh is blown apart, burned, turned to ash. It's actually exceeding her ability to heal. She finds that she hates Eidolon, or at least her other half does. She can't really tell the difference anymore. A killing instinct overcomes her, a true desire to kill that she hasn't felt before. Her body really wants Eidolon dead, so she offers it a deal. Her body can make that happen as long as it doesn't hurt Trickster.
And it's in this moment that you realize that these things exist in every single cape on the planet. I think we can say that Noelle's mutation might have caused hers to be a little more active and direct with its desire, but they're inside everyone, and they're pushing them towards violence, nudging them in this direction of hate, making them wanting to kill, making them be like this. And holy shit, like the terrifying implications of that are insane.
Right, yeah. So when she surrenders to her passenger, the memory she gets this time, the nice memory she requested, isn't hers. It's like a trigger vision. And this time, it's not just images. It's really a memory. It has context. There's understanding. There's purpose. It's an individual who's part of a collective of trillions. But this one entity that we're seeing through, it has a target, a specific individual that it's meant to bond with. And Noelle comes back and realizes it wasn't her. This power or this passenger or whatever was meant for someone else. and she thinks gone to the wrong person, askew from the beginning, then twisted further by her own psychological issues, messed up by the fact that she'd only taken half a dose.
Yeah, so this is huge. And I think now we have to believe that this is what Cauldron is doing with their formulas, that they've found a way to either catch or intercept the passenger, take it from where it was supposed to go, bottle it up, and give it to someone else. But that is wrong as far as the passenger is concerned. I wonder what that says about the passengers that are inside the Cauldron caves. And it makes me wonder, is that why Eidolon's power is dying? That it was never really meant for him, and he was just using borrowed power, and it's dried up.
Interesting. So Noelle is surrounded by clones when she comes back to herself, copies of Trickster, Skitter, Gru, Regent, Grace, and Tecton, I believe. I wasn't clear if that was supposed to be Tecton or not, but maybe so.
Based on the tags we get at the bottom, I think the answer is yes.
All right.
But Skitter is controlling rats. It's rat controlling Skitter.
Yep. That's awesome.
Gross.
Yep.
Somehow worse than bug controlling Skitter.
And she's like covered in clothing of rats the same way Skitter does with her bugs.
Yeah.
Eidolon is on his knees in front of her, and he's despairing. He isn't finding that well of power that he expected to find. There's just nothing to reach for, he says.
Poor fool.
Yeah. So Noelle repeats her deal to Eidolon again. He can leave and let her have the Undersiders, and she'll surrender. Her Skitter clone looks concerned when she takes Eidolon's armband, and Noelle snaps at her, then tells her, "Trickster said you thrive in this kind of impossible fight. Prove it, or die horribly. I don't care." And the clone smiles back at her.
Oh man, evil Skitter. The things you could tell us about our Skitter. I can't wait. I can't wait. It's going to be so great.
I know. Eidolon calls in reinforcements to help with the clones, and then he calls the heroes off of Noelle. And at this point refers to her by her code name, her cape name, finally, Echidna, because somebody didn't want her to be associated with his little girl, Noelle.
Yeah, Echidna, which is, of course, I think it's Greek mythology, right? That's the half human, half monster that's called the mother of all monsters. Like, I think every monster in Greek mythology comes from the Echidna, I think they say.
Is that true? See, I had no idea. I thought it was literally named after the Echidna animal, which is an egg-laying mammal.
No, I mean, it works for both.
But it works for both, but I think Mother of Monsters is absolutely the correct interpretation.
Yeah,
I did not even know that.
Well, there you go. You learned something
for bringing
new.
That up. Yeah.
And this, I think, this calls back to this idea of Noelle in this moment of where she's finally slipping further away from being human and finally becoming this passenger. That's when we award her with this code name. That's when she becomes Echidna. And I think that's really fitting based on the name stuff we were doing earlier in the chapter or the arc.
Yeah, no, it's like an inversion of telling Weld to find his own name. It's like, no, Noelle, you're not Noelle anymore. You're Echidna now. Yeah.
Matt, refresh my memory. Do we know Noelle's last name? Because there's that beat about the little girl. Do we know if that's her same last name?
Good question. I don't think we do. I would have to look back at the beginning of the Traveler's arc and see if I know that like Trickster's mom lists some last names. We might cross check it against those. I'm not sure.
It would be interesting though, because and they specifically say the little girl's 3 years old. So if this is supposed to be an Earth Bet version of Noelle, how does that work? That's interesting.
Yeah, that shouldn't probably is. I mean, shouldn't work that way, right? It should be her age, but we don't really actually know how all that works at this point. So we are. Echidna takes the reprieve and she rushes back to Coil's base. She thinks about how now she feels that her other self has an identity, and it's an identity so vast that it makes her problems feel meaningless and artificial. It's not my world, she thought. It's almost like a game, killing characters in some false barbaric setting, which calls back perfectly to the start of the chapter, which was the video game.
Yeah, it's a wonderful little self-contained story in this chapter. And I think it says something about the world and the passengers too. Because I've been working on this big, huge, like book-wide theory again that I like to do every so often that end up being totally wrong because I'm way too specific with them. But I'm not ready to share that quite yet. But this passenger stuff we've learned in this section seems to lend some credence to it. That the idea that the entire world, that every single person in it, that to these entities, none of it matters. It's so small and insignificant. It's a kid, burning ants with a magnifying glass. And you know what? No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to speculate. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go nuts. So stay tuned because I'm just going to go crazy.
Good. Be bold. Yeah. So Noelle is able to move through the collapsed tunnels leading to Coil's base by basically absorbing the rubble, blocking it into her body, and then squeezing through like a fluid.
Jesus, I didn't know she could do that. That's new.
Yeah, she's so durable. She can just smush through things. So she finds Tattletale and Rachel inside, and she smells the heroes closing in outside, and it reminds her of the qualifiers game explicitly. Well then, Tattletale grinned. Her tightening grip on the railing betrayed the emotion she was trying to hide. Come on, do your worst.
What a way to end a chapter, Matt. That was so great.
Yeah.
Everyone asks me when I finish the arcs and the sections of reading for the week if I'm tempted to really just jump in and read on. Usually the answer is no, because I'm usually more tempted to go back and dive into the arc again and find some new stuff in there that I missed the first time around. But this time I really, really, really wanted to dive into Arc 19. I really wanted to start reading right away. I didn't do it. I stopped myself, but I really wanted to.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those times when the propulsiveness carries across arcs, and it's not a clean dramatic ending. It doesn't need to be. That's not a criticism. It's just
There's a lot of common themes amongst this arc, but you're right, it's not a self-contained story. It doesn't complete a storyline. There's definitely some connections that make this an arc, but yeah, we're not done, and that you can feel that as you exit this chapter.
Yeah. Do
we want to play the name game real quick? Because
sure.
All these clones have names and they're all really wonderful.
Yeah, why don't you go for it?
So Grooves is named Abhorror. These are all me. It doesn't actually say, I'm guessing. So if you think I'm wrong, let me know.
Okay.
Because Abhorror links pretty well with Grue and what the definition of those two words mean. I'm guessing Tricksters is Charlatan, which is pretty great. Skitters is Scurry, which fits with the rats very well. I like that a lot.
I love that.
I'm guessing Graces is Gross. That's the one that's the one I did basically by process of elimination.
Okay.
It fits at least it's alliteration, so you get that going for you. Tectons is Temblor, which is basically just another word for an earthquake, so that makes a lot of sense. And Regents is Vizier, which I like a lot too.
Totally.
And now I'm gonna. I know he doesn't have one, but I'm putting a mustache on him and a goatee. I'm putting that on.
Right. Yes. Me too. That's definitely my headcanon. All right. Awesome. That wraps up the arc discussion.
And we are running so late, so let's go fast.
Good stuff. All right. Well, then let's go fast through those speculations, Scott.
All right. First, let's close some old ones out. I said that the passengers inside each cape have the ability to manipulate their emotions or actions, causing an increased amount of conflict in the world. We're going to say tentatively correct based off of the passenger inside Noelle. If this is just something specific to Noelle's passenger and we learn that later, we'll change. But for now, we're going to say that. The other one was Noelle has an eating disorder, which also was proven correct. So let's move right into my new ones, Matt. Here's where I'm going to get really bold.
Okay.
I'm saying that Taylor had a second trigger event already, and it happened immediately after the first while still in her locker. And that is the smell that Noelle senses in both Grue, Skitter, and Eidolon. I don't know how Eidolon matches up with that. I haven't quite figured out that yet, but he's super powerful, so it seems to reason that if anyone out of this group was going to have 2 triggering events, one would be him. But the important part of my thing is that Taylor had a second trigger already, and just didn't know it, which was something that was set up in the Nazi interlude last week, that we barely touched on because I was having a moment.
All right.
All right, and here is my big, bold, beautiful prediction that I wasn't even sure I was going to make and then just decided to do it. So here we go. I think that the passengers, or the things that make them, are performing a 300-year-long science experiment, which fits with the in 300 years thing that we learned in the birdcage in that one section. So they seed our planet with the potential for these trigger events and observe and report as we destroy ourselves. If not enough people are having trigger events, they send down the Endbringers, who attack separate locations and cause enough devastation to induce the trigger events, but they don't go rampaging and destroy the entire world outright on their own. How Scion and Cauldron fit into that theory, I don't know yet. So let's call it a theory and a speculation in progress, maybe?
All right. Yeah, I like big, long, complicated ones like that because it's valuable to see kind of where your head is and where, like, how you're putting things together. Mm-hmm. And so what if, every detail doesn't line up right? Like, it's so really fun to hear kind of the progression of your thought process.
Cool.
So.
All right.
Well, yeah, that will wrap up our coverage of Arc 18 Queen. I hope everyone enjoyed our discussion and hearing Scott's reactions. As always, we appreciate your feedback, and we're always trying to improve. So let us know if you have any advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's episode.
You can always reach out to us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or on Twitter at gotwormpod, which is also where I do my live readings every Thursday. My personal Twitter is at ScottDaly85, that's DALY, and Matt's is at Mordinamail, and that's MORD. I'm just kidding, it's in the show notes.
Oh, poor Victoria. If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Worm, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
And as always, you can find this, all the other podcasts we do, and all of our writing, essays, film, and TV criticism and more at dailyplanetfilms.com. This week on the main Daily Planet podcast feed, Matt and I got really nerdy about the D&D podcast, The Adventure Zone. Most of the discussion is spoiler-free, so if you haven't finished The Adventure Zone or don't even know what that is, give it a listen. It's one of the best stories that I've ever experienced, and I'm reading Worm, so that's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
Also, tomorrow, when you're listening to this, we will have a new episode of our monthly series called The Kryptonian Collection. We're bringing that back, where we discuss Terry Gilliam's 1995 film 12 Monkeys and decide whether it's good enough to enter a list of the best films our planet has to offer. So look out for that.
Yep, those are really fun. We also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms. That's DALY. If you like what we do here and want to make sure that we keep doing more, consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Special thanks to new producer at the $2 level, Jake T.
Thanks, Jake. We're also in the middle of planning some changes to our patron rewards and our goals and everything, because we realize that we need some better incentives, especially those of you that donated at the higher levels. We're going to make those announcements as they come. We're still working on it. Just stay tuned for it. But as always, thank you guys so much for your support. We're trying to make you happy. If you are donating money to us, we want to make sure you're getting something out of it. So
yeah, we really, really appreciate it. Also, speaking of Patreon, make sure you stop by Wildbow's page and toss some money there because he is the guy that makes this whole thing possible.
Yeah, and as I always say, if you can't donate, that's fine, but you can still help us out. If you're like a therapist, for example, maybe you can recommend each and every one of your patients listen to our podcast. I don't know a lot about therapy, but I'm assuming it'll be good for them, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we do is basically therapy for fictional characters.
I feel like you're right. Also, if you are subscribed to us on iTunes, please take a quick minute to rate and review the podcast. It really does help. This week's Spotlight review comes all the way from Russia, Matt.
Wow.
User Lion Shadow gives us 5 stars and says, the awesomest literature podcast ever. 2 men speaking about Worm, the superhero-ish dramatic novel, and it's not boring. Hey, thanks. Actually, it's really fun and interesting. I'm waiting for the next chapter like if it was a new Game of Thrones season. Matt, we just got compared to Game of Thrones.
Wow.
Which is a huge compliment, assuming you still like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'll assume he's talking about like season 2 or season 3.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, all right, that's it for us this week. Next week, we're covering the first half of Arc 19 Scourge. Scott, what do you think this one's about?
Well, Matt, I expect that Echidna will be the scourge of Brockton Bay as the battle against her elevates to its climax. I really can't wait to see how Skitter and company get out of all this mess.
Well, we will find out next Wednesday on another exciting episode of We've Got Worm.
Bye-bye.